Hey, everybody, welcome. This is Staying Home with Josh Fox, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal on the Young Turks, coming to you from Northeast Pennsylvania, an area that was saved by the anti-fracking movement, an area that the community came together in an unprecedented fashion and fought off the most powerful industry on the face of the planet to preserve our air and our water and our land, and we have to do the same thing worldwide. So this program is about the Green New Deal. Every day on the program, we talk about a different aspect of the Green New Deal with a different guest, and we have a musical guest as well, or some aspect of cultural discussion that we have. We're very, very grateful to be on the Young Turks Network. This is our very first week or doing that. Today on the program, we're going to have Ketan Joshi, who I got to know his work because of his monumental, epic, important takedown of Michael Moore's Planet of the Humans, a film which crazily advocates fossil fuel industry talking points, says that renewable energy doesn't work, and then starts talking about population control in the midst of a global pandemic, all things which are deeply problematic. And Ketan's work, his article that he put out on his own site, really takes the film down point by point. We'll talk a little bit about that, but more importantly, it's important for us to understand and to cover the basic aspect of renewable energy. Renewable energy works. It's better than fossil fuels. It's not tied to all these systems of oppression and extraction and destruction and toxicity. And it has vastly less emissions than fossil fuels. And it is where we have to go. It's the basic cornerstone of the cornerstone of the Green New Deal is renewable energy. That's something that's indisputable. We're going to talk about it on the program today with an expert. And, you know, every day on this program, we talk about a different aspect of the Green New Deal. You're going to be like, well, how long could that possibly go on for? Well, it could go on actually forever until we get a Green New Deal, right? Or until all the aspects of it are fulfilled. And why am I saying this? Because really, I'll let you in on a little secret. Nobody actually has the Green New Deal. There are so many different versions of the Green New Deal. There's a Bernie Sanders version. There's an AOC and Ed Markey resolution that points to one. There's Elizabeth Warren's version. There's Marianne Williamson's version. There's New Consensus's version. They all have a lot of the same elements. Renewable energy, justice for frontline communities, addressing the greed of the fossil fuel industry, lowering emissions, rejoining the Paris Accords, all those things to stop climate change. But the Green New Deal, in my understanding of this, is also a sea change in our imagination, a sea change in our vision. The way that we process our understanding of how we as humans function on the planet Earth. So that's what this program is about. It's not just your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal, as if we were sitting there with an encyclopedia going through the pages of the Green New Deal, going, oh, well, this part, and then there's this part, and then there's this part, and then there's this part. We're doing that. But it's more of a philosophical undertaking than that. It's more of a question of how do we approach this idea that humans have to live in a partnership with the earth rather than an exploitative relationship to the earth. How can we cooperate? How can we be good gardeners or good stewards? Or how can we live in some type of harmony with the planet, which humans have never done? Pretty much ever. I mean, you could argue, perhaps, that when there were 1 million people on the planet, and those were indigenous hunter-gatherer societies, that those were, in fact, in harmony with nature. Some people say they were, some people say they weren't, some people say they were. There's a philosophical argument that goes on forever. The point remains, however, that we have billions of people on the planet. We have a climate system that is tanking, getting ready to evict us, and we better figure out how we're going to live in harmony. And that's what this program is about. So my guest tonight is Ketan Joshi. I really hope I'm pronouncing his name because I've never met him before. Have I got that right?
You did. Yeah, that was pretty good.
All right. Is there a better way to do it?
Look, I say Ketan. It's a bit of a long story. It's an Indian name, so there's a bunch of different ways to say it. Ketan kind of flows the nicest in my Australian accent.
All right, Ketan then. Thank you so much for being with us. I was telling in our introduction your epic takedown of the Michael Moore movie, which, you know, is less important to talk about because that movie is increasingly becoming sort of the pandemic of climate, whatever you want to call it. And it's been so roundly rejected that Bill McKibben earlier in the week came on and said he actually was starting to feel sorry for Michael Moore. I'm not feeling so sorry for Michael Moore. But it's less important to really talk about that than it is to talk about the basics behind what you're explaining. Because we're talking every day about the Green New Deal. And the cornerstone of the Green New Deal being renewable energy, right? How it works, how we derive it, what the benefits are. And this is something that you have a great deal of expertise in, right? So tell us, just from the standpoint of the very beginning of the premise, if you don't know, of Planet of the Humans is by Michael Moore and Jeff Gibbs, is that renewable energy doesn't work or that it's completely dependent on fossil fuels. Now, this is something that a lot of Americans and a lot of people around the world don't actually know, right? Because we're not well-versed as a society in the virtues of renewable energy. It takes an expert like Ketan to tell us the truth. So what's the truth about this?
Yeah. Okay. So the film itself there's a lot going on. You know, it's so dense. I'm sure some of your viewers have watched it and felt what I felt when I watched it, which was it's almost like this onslaught. It's kind of hard to manage what's coming at you. So you can kind of summarize it, though, into a couple of things quite neatly, and we can kind of talk about those summarized things because there's just way too much in the film to talk about piece by piece. And so the first point is basically where renewable energy comes from, and the argument of the film is that it's really energy intensive, it's mining intensive. You need fossil fuels to make it, and then the next half of the argument is that renewable energy doesn't really displace fossil fuels. So when you shove it onto a grid, nothing changes. All that's happening is that you're piling renewable energy on top of what's already there. So the first argument is one of those things where it has this element of what sounds like truth to it, which makes it relatively easy to misinform people. Because you take that element of truth, you repackage it, and then you kind of put it over here, and people are like, "Oh wow, oh my god, I can't believe that manufacturing a solar panel requires fossil fuels."
This is what people were saying to me. They were freaking out. I was getting emails going, "Oh my god, I'm so depressed. I didn't know this was true." And all I wanted to say was, "It's not true." Go ahead.
Yeah. So before I get into that, though, I want to mention one little thing about misinformation. You mentioned pandemic, right? Something people don't understand about misinformation is that it actually takes a long time for it to be honed and for it to become effective. And when I wrote my thing, I was talking about how everything in it felt simultaneously very old, but also very familiar. And the reason behind that is because a lot of these ideas came about around sort of 2010, 2012-ish. And you would actually read these. So, I come from Australia. I used to work in the clean energy industry in Australia. I quit that industry in 2016, and I've been writing a book. I've been doing some consulting for ethical investment firms, things like that. But basically, that particular thing about renewable energy requires all these fossil fuels to build them actually originated in Australia from this organization called the Minerals Council of Australia. They're the country's coal lobby. And you can actually dig back into their Twitter feed and see it all through there. So, of course, renewable energy exists as a thing, right? Like the same as my mouse, my phone, everything I've got on my desk right now. So because they exist as objects in the real world, they require something to manufacture them. You need to get some energy input into manufacturing them. Unfortunately, we live in this world where fossil fuels dominate. It's actually relatively impossible to boycott fossil fuels, right? Even if you switch your home to clean energy, of course, you should definitely do all of these things, but you cannot completely remove them from your life. There's just no physical way to do that because you always kind of end up being linked somehow to a product that was made using fossil fuels. It's horrific. I hate it. I genuinely hate that that's true. But because it's true, you can't do anything without participating in some way against your will in this industry that has managed to seize the world, to seize our species and say, you're not going to be able to exist without using fossil fuels. Now, every single effort to change that system has to participate in the system. Everything has to be linked somehow to fossil fuels. So it's easy to come up with the hypocrisy of argument of like, oh, you want to build your solar panel that was made with fossil fuels. Everything was. It sucks. Like video cameras are made of fossil fuels.
Sure.
YouTube servers are made of fossil fuels. It's not great. And everybody came to terms with this like a decade ago.
Right. You have to use the system to change the system. There's no way out of that. And it becomes this horrible trope of the fossil fuel industry saying, oh, well, you're going to stop flying or you're wearing plastic glasses or blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
You're watching Staying Home with Josh Fox, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. My guest is Ketan Joshi, who's talking to us about renewable energy and the Green New Deal. Thank you for laying that out. But the basics are that they do work and they reduce emissions over time. Is that correct?
Yeah. So this is the second point that's really, really important. It's so important to grasp this because there's sort of two narratives playing out about the construction of renewable energy, right? The first narrative is that you have this base of fossil fuels, and the concern is that when you build a new wind turbine and you build a solar panel, they just pile on top, and because people are demanding more energy as the population grows and consumption grows and wealth grows, all those renewable energy additions are doing are just filling up the gap as it builds. Now, it's been 10 years since the renewable energy industry kind of started to kick off in the world. And what we have seen is that there are actually countries in the world where you can test this. You can say, okay, what happened? You know, like you went on these massive programs to build out, you know, many different types of renewable energy in huge scales. And the simple answer is that they cut into coal. They cut into coal output very effectively, right? The UK is probably the most I won't go into all the other examples, but the United Kingdom is such a good example of this because they took the approach of like, we are going to get people to increase their energy efficiency and cut their demand, right? That was a really big focus in the UK. But they also said, we're going to build offshore wind farms, onshore wind farms, and new solar as well. And they did both of those things in parallel. And it was like this pincer movement on coal, where coal just dropped off because, you know, coal is also not cheap anymore. Coal used to be cheap, but the plants are getting old and, you know, it costs way more money to upgrade them. So it is actually pretty easy to push them out. And of course, most recently in the UK, demand has been dropping, of course, further than anybody anticipated. And there's also been increased wind resource too. So you've actually just had the first full 1 month period without coal in the UK since like, you know, what, like the 1800s or something.
I think last month, the United States renewable energy industry beat coal here. I just read
exactly. That. Yeah. So 2019 was the first year on record that globally around the entire world, zero carbon sources generated more than coal and gas and oil, right? So now one important thing to note is that zero carbon sources include things like nuclear and biomass. But when you look at wind and solar were the things that grew in that mix, right? Like they were the things that were making the changes. Biomass reduced a little bit and nuclear stayed the same. So actually, sorry, correction, nuclear is actually decreasing in the IEA's data. So just to wrap that all up, it works, right? Like it does what it says in the box. When you build it, it cuts into fossil fuels. Now, gas. I should mention gas briefly as well because I think maybe, you know, your viewers would probably be curious, and of course, you have a lot of experience.
Well, obviously, for me, the gas question is a huge one because this is one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we didn't have as a replacement for coal, which is what the United States is doing. But the real reason why this is so important is because all across this nation and all across the world, there are people in dogfights against the fossil fuel industry in their backyards. Pipelines, fracking wells, LNG terminals, mountaintop removal for coal. I mean, they are out. The Dakota Access Pipeline, the Keystone XL pipeline, and this has its correlates in Europe and in Australia and all over the world, right? And so what these people are doing is they're desperately trying to convince their neighbors to side with them because that's the way it works. When we have a populist movement, we tend to win. But the neighbors coming out saying, well, what are you going to do? You're going to sit in the dark? You know what I mean? So we have to have renewable energy. So when you say this is the way of the world, it gives us that hope. It's like oxygen, right? It's like our lifeblood to know that renewable energy is there. If not, we would be campaigning to turn the lights off in the hospital in the middle of an operation, right? So for all of those people watching this, they have to know this information is hope. This information is life. This information is the summer breeze coming down off of the mountains. You know what I mean? That gives you that sense of, okay, we can continue.
I've been, you know, I mentioned earlier, you know, I started doing this back in like 2000. I actually started in the industry in 2010, you know, February 2010. So almost a bit more than a decade ago. And the really interesting thing is comparing my feelings to when I was in the industry to to now, essentially. I was actually strangely a little less hopeful when I was in the industry, which is a strange feeling. And I think the reason behind it is because when you engage in these debates, right, when you're really in the nitty gritty of the back and forth and the arguments, you actually start to become a little bit dejected yourself. And then you take a step back, and it's 2020, and you know the UK is going months without coal power output. Renewable energy is starting to do these 40%, 50%, 60% penetrations in these huge isolated grid areas. And this is all the stuff that everyone said was impossible a decade ago. So, and I don't want to keep bringing it back to the film, but one of the things that I found when I was researching that blog post was this little comment from the director in a Huffington Post blog that he wrote in 2010, where he said, most experts agree that you can't get to any more than 10 or 20% renewable energy before things start to go haywire, right? Like the whole grid explodes, everyone, the lights turn off, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, you talk about hope, like it's actually, I get my hope from realizing that all of the things that we've been led to believe are technically impossible are happening just from a bit of effort and dedication. Like it's just, and of course, all those fights that you mentioned where people are struggling with their neighbors to fight against new fossil fuel infrastructure in their backyard, all those fights are really, really important, and they're essentially the lifeblood of climate action, in my view. Because it's one thing to build a wind turbine, but that doesn't guarantee that a coal mine is going to get shut down. So you need, of course, like all these other actions, but just from the technological side of it, which of course is not the whole story. There's a lot more to it. Just purely from the technological side of it, when you hear these remarks about these sort of like fatalistic pleas that, we just can't do it, like stop pretending that this is possible. What those people are doing is that they're basically disregarding the impact of effort, right? So when you try, surprisingly, stuff happens. Like when you put hard work in and you say, okay, it's not easy to convert this entire grid to like microgrids and locally owned solar farms and locally owned batteries, blah blah blah. Yeah, we know it's not easy. No one said it was going to be easy, but that doesn't mean that you should give up. Yeah, that doesn't mean like, we better stop trying. Like that's just ludicrous in my view. And there are places in the world where you can just see hard work actually having an impact. You just you look at the numbers on a chart and it's like, oh, they did it. That's it.
You're watching Staying Home with Josh Fox, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal and why we're not going back. My guest is Ketan Joshi. Yes, you write about this on your in your blog or on your website, The Great Giving Up. Oh, what a title. And
Thanks.
There is a whole strain of this type of thinking, which is that, it's too late, we should just give up, right? In fact, in my film on climate change, which I think my personal favorite movie that I've ever made, which you should all watch, How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things Climate Can't Change, the best movie on climate change, is I hit headlong into that. Boom, like a steam train, like hitting a brick wall in a Ferrari at 150 miles an hour. Boom, oh my God, it's too late, we have to give up. And I get to that place and realize we have to move on, we have to keep trying, we have to go, we have to learn. We have to learn. And that's that wall that I think is so attractive and so narcissistic and so I want to believe that everything will end in my lifetime, so I'm just going to pretend it's all terrible. What is that? Is that what you mean by the great giving up? Is that what they're trying to encourage? Why is that so dangerous?
Yeah, so I sort of, in that post, I just align it very closely with climate change denial because I see it as two overlapping aims, right? They're both basically there to say, how can I not change? How can I not do anything different to what I'm currently doing? Right. And I'm obviously very critical of that view in my post, but it's probably worth mentioning. You mentioned the Green New Deal before, and it's worth mentioning that obviously that policy is not just technological. It's not even really a technology policy. It's more of it's a humanistic sort of social good thing, right? And technology is there as a tool. It's a lever to make human life better. From my reading of that policy, so it's so strange that all this sort of fatalism, what I describe as the great giving up, is actually heavily focused on technology, right? It's these spats about oh, you can't do 100% renewables, oh, this solar farm is too big. Like that sort of stuff lends itself to an irrelevant argument. Because what we're seeing, not just in the US, but in many different places around the world, is that climate policy is getting a lot more human focused. It's worrying about the human soul, like the way people think, the things they're worried about, safety nets, and the concerns that they have every day. And technology is still there, but it's it's starting to take a bit of a backseat. And I actually think that's sort of a good thing, right? Like that's I can really, only the one thing that I can understand about where critics are coming from is the sort of like, when you go back to like 2010 to 2015, sometimes there was a bit of a techno-utopian view of these things.
Sure.
But that's kind of done. When you look at climate movements today, you don't really get that vibe, particularly from youth climate movements, from Extinction Rebellion, from the push for the Green New Deal in the US, and when you look at policies in Australia and the UK as well, you don't get the sort of gleaming, shiny technology vibe that somehow people are still arguing against. You actually get more of a human-focused thing. So when it comes to like giving up, I feel like it's just such an outdated, ridiculous thing, and it really sucks to see it getting power, because now when you have less climate action, it actually leads to less benefits for human beings directly today. It's not just about emissions anymore.
Yeah. Listen, so this also leads us down a quite dangerous path, and I want to bring this up because you also speak about this in a different in all of the posts that I've read, and I think it's such an important thing to acknowledge. When you start to say, okay, technology won't get us there, we give up, right? Which is what the fossil fuel industry wants you to do, okay? You might as well use fossil fuels is one of those waves down. But then let's say you're still concerned. Let's say you're like, oh, well, you know what? Even though fossil fuels is here to stay, which is a lie, but you bought that lie, then you go down this other road, which is that, oh, wait, the only way we can deal with this is to reduce those populations, reduce those pesky number of people, cut those number of people. That's the only way we can do it. And I wonder where they're actually reproducing. It's not here in America, is it? No. It's in Africa. So when you start getting down this really giving up thread, and you still convinced that you're a moral person, then the next thing you do is let's reduce the population, which is eco-fascism. Let's talk a bit about eco-fascism and why this is a consequence of this type of thinking.
Yeah, so there's a really great tweet someone posted about this the other day. Her name's Meg Walker, and she posted a tweet saying, when it comes to population, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically it was something along the lines of, people just tend to drop it and then leave it hanging, right? So someone will just say, the world's population is growing too quickly, and then they'll just kind of step back and not explain precisely what they're suggesting. Now, obviously energy and climate is my core thing, but I've written a bit about racism in the past. Coming from Australia, it's sort of it's a thing there. And this is actually a thing that you see in racism, right? Where people don't like being specific. Of course, with population control, what happens is a similar thing. People kind of just drop it. They don't really want to explain precisely what they mean. So when you start talking about what the United Nations is projecting for the world's population, and then you say, what's the problem here? Like what are you targeting? What do you want to be different? And can you tell me how you can start to rescue humanity from the cage that it's been trapped in by the fossil fuel industry just by reducing the number of people? I'm going to need some more information on this. And you often
how are you proposing we should reduce population?
So something that comes up a lot is basically they'll say, well, what we want to do is empower women in developing countries to make choices about their families, to make choices about reproduction. Those are all things you should be doing anyway. You shouldn't be doing it because it reduces carbon emissions. So if there's a benefit down the line where population growth starts to slow in countries where it's currently high, then great, but it can't be done through coercion. It can't be done on the grounds that it's on par with building a wind turbine or building a solar panel or reducing consumption in a city or making a better city. To lump all those things together with something like the right to choose, like the right to control your own body, it's a very strange and weird thing. And so all those things, they're going to happen anyway. They should happen anyway. So that's when things start to get a little scary, because then people start to talk about, well, if that's not enough, then we're going to have to start reducing the population through other means. And of course, I think this is something that people would have seen and experienced quite a lot of this year. Of course, with coronavirus, a lot of people were trying to frame what was happening on streets of cities as something good, right? So you get like animals, walking through streets in cities because people
Which
are in
all was
lockdown.
not, it was all not really true. Right?
Exactly, right. A lot of those animals were there before. But basically, the larger point that all of that misses is that we're still in the cage. There's no change to the systems that trap us in an existence that hurts the planet and that hurts each other. We need to basically figure out a way out of it. And of course, my argument is I very strongly believe that getting out of that cage is a lot easier than we've been led to believe. We kind of have this feeling like, oh, well, there's nothing you can do. We're trapped inside it. But it's not true. I think that we can figure out ways to live that is compatible with a healthy planet. And basically you deprioritize things like obsessing over economic growth and GDP. You start to prioritize things like human well-being, biodiversity, in the natural world. And then all of a sudden, all of these things start plugging together. The planet starts to get better. And yeah, I think that it's really feasible. And so turning to things like if your default reaction is like, oh, we need to start cutting humans off the species. I just don't get how someone can go there when you could just walk up to a coal mine and say, shut this down. And you could just have
Right.
it's so easy to not dig up fossil fuels. It is so easy to leave them in the ground. And my mind is just blown by people who go, well, I guess we just got to dig them up. We better start getting rid of people now.
But it's not as if,
no.
I mean, there is a downturn in industrial pollution with COVID, but emissions are not necessarily going down. And there are also other trends that you pointed out recently that are not favorable in terms of emissions because of COVID. Talk about that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of up and a lot of down with COVID-19, right? So there's the immediate impacts. There's cleaner air. There's cleaner like the areas where shipping and things like that normally going through. That's cleaner as well. Emissions have decreased very slightly. The problem being is that when it comes to something like electricity, for instance, people go from using electricity in an office to using electricity at home. People are flying less, but what we're actually starting to see in the past week is people are driving more because people don't want to take public transport.
Right.
So, which is not great. And then pile on top of that all of the political stuff, right? So, of course, the pandemic is great cover for fossil fuel industries to try and snaffle their way out of regulations and to try and get stimulus money to building more fossil fuel infrastructure. But at the same time, of course, coronavirus recovery could actually be used to make human well-being better, to kind of cure some of the problems that were existing even before coronavirus. So there's still a long way to go when it comes to the long-term impacts of this. It could be very bad. It could be something that we use, as horrific and horrible as the actual disease itself has been. It still could be something that transforms those elements of society that actually help us to escape the cage. So,
which is what we've been arguing on this program, that the Green New Deal is a fundamental part of our reaction to the coronavirus. What are the ways forward that you see?
Yeah, the Green New Deal is a really good example, because I think that something like, of course I have an energy background, right? So I kind of have this bad habit of always thinking back to electricity and energy and things like that. But when you start to plug the concept of justice, climate justice, and a just transition into all of these things, you start to rethink what you know about the way that all these things happen today. So just to give you one example, one really good idea that I've seen coming out is these ways of transforming grids so that there's more local ownership of energy technologies, right? So I'm not necessarily talking about somebody who has a home and they put solar on the top of their roof. That's pretty good, but it's not accessible to everybody, particularly not those with low incomes, people living like renters, living in apartments, things like that. So you start to have these really small scale facilities and they're owned locally. And it's actually a really good example of where stimulus money from coronavirus could actually be something that leads to a change in people's lives that cures a wound. Do you know what I mean? So
let's hope,
so it's something like,
and it's much
yeah,
more resilient, right? We were talking about this with the reaction to Hurricanes Maria and Irene in the Caribbean, because we knew that solar microgrids would be much more resilient than setting up the whole poles and wires and connecting that to a diesel fossil fuel plant. So these are some of the hopeful things. And you can read more about these at your website, yes?
That's right. KatanJoshi.co is where I, put my blog posts up. I tweet as well at KatanJ0. So when I write for other publications and things like that. And I've got a book coming out in September that basically covers energy justice in Australia and the shifting landscape of climate policy in the country.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for being on today. It's a ray of hope, what you're saying. We cannot allow doom and gloom to reinforce racism from the past. This is not our path forward. Our path forward is the hope of the things that you're saying with us. And please do follow his page, because it is extraordinary. You'll get a lot of really amazing information and hopeful information there.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Hey, it's Staying Home with Josh Fox, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. Welcome back. My musical guest today is one of my favorites, certainly one of my favorite performers to see live. Her record, Bangkok Silver, changed my life. Her new one is called Hel Kiaz. It's Helen Gillet from the great Crescent City of New Orleans, where she performs quite a bit. And I'm assuming you are at home in the studio.
Yep, I am. I'm getting ready for my live stream Monday night, and this is my little set that I've been working on this week. So,
we can tell that we're in like the 50th day of this, because now people's sets are getting slightly more sophisticated. You've got these beautiful cellos behind you. I've got a banjo over here. We've got
yeah,
some
you
stuff
got the
going
framing.
On. It's really important. What are you going to play for us first today?
I'll do one off of my latest record, Hel Kiaz. This is a song called Vautour, which means vulture.
Wonderful.
Reconstitution, ça veut bien tout, les humains sont des vautours. Reconstitution, ça veut bien tout, les humains sont des vautours. Toutes les traditions, reconstitution, ça veut bien tout, les humains sont des vautours. Toutes les traditions, reconstitution, ça veut bien tout, les humains sont des vautours. Tradition, reconstitution, ça veut bien tout, les humains sont des vautours. Toute tradition, reconstitution, ça veut bien tout, les humains sont des vautours. Toute tradition, reconstitution, ça veut bien tout, les humains sont des vautours. tradition, reconstitution, ça veut bien tout, les humains sont dévots. Tradition, reconstitution, ça veut bien tout, les humains sont dévots. Reconstitution, ça veut bien tout, les humains sont dévots. Tradition, reconstitution, ça veut bien tout, les humains sont dévots.
I love it so much.
Yay.
So this is on the record that you recorded live, I think, for a
Yeah.
live in front of a live audience. I think I was there.
Yeah, it was in this beautiful studio here in the Bywater that I'm actually in right now.
Mhm.
You couldn't tell because my set is so, day 50. But but yeah, it was recorded here in New Orleans, and and I was very fortunate to have a live audience of really beautiful music lovers. I could feel it in the room, and everybody was super supportive, and some magic happened, and album came out of that. It's my favorite, doing live. Well, here's a New Orleans song. This is about a bass player who I never met. He was born in 1900 and died in 1988, and played with Preservation Hall Jazz Band and countless bands. Like I mentioned, we all in New Orleans, you don't get to be a musician in New Orleans without playing in at least 10 bands. So, so here's a slow drag Pavageau, named after Alcide Pavageau. His nickname was Slow Drag because he danced really well, and he danced a good slow drag. Was the name of a dance back then. He also built himself a bass that I really admire. I love anybody who builds their own instruments. So we talked about that before as well. But I wanted to play this one for all you viewers, so that you could know there was a wonderful bass player here who went by Slow Drag. Slow drag, Pavageau, find a barrel and build me a cello, 'cause I've been dragging this good heart around. The grit, the egos, and the noise of this town. Slow drag, Pavageau, find me a barrel and build me a cello, 'cause Lord, I wanna strut with a barrel cello and march and parades across broad to the bayou before my last anchor pulls away and I bury these fingers in a second grave. Slow drag, Pavageau, find me a barrel and build me a cello.
Strut with a barrel cello and march parades across Broad to the bayou. And before my last anchor pulls away, and I bury these fingers, and I bury these fingers, and I bury these fingers in a second grave. Slow drape of a zoo, find me a cello, find me a cello, and I'll build my barrel.
Thanks, Helen. That was fantastic, as always. Until next time, stay home, stay safe, stay healthy, stay revolutionary, stay home. Thanks for being with us. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Damn it, they failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong. Because you should be angry. Young Turks.
But it was genuine. He was mad.
Cenk Uygur, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
Cenk the Turk Uygur.
What kind of TV station is this? The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It was right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power.
We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world.
We're celebrating our 1 billionth view. Television, we're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
If Phil and host beat CNN and headline news combined, at some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a tall glass of shut-up juice.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him.
He says to me, "You won't believe the meeting that I just had."
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
They want him off the air.
Cenk took an incredible risk.
We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I should be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it.
Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys, ready for a rock and roll show.
We've never played instruments before, but we're going to try for the first time right now.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? Jesus would come back and be like, no, I'm done with all the banks. And he said, now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, Weezy, they're coming to get me. It's not about fighting amongst each other. It's about making sure we correct the political system so our government works for us and our representatives actually represent us. And unfortunately, not a lot of the rest of the media even understands that concept, but we do here.
You can't be pro-life and pro the death penalty.
They're afraid to do it because they're stuck in this, this lie. The Republicans are great with money and the economy, and then they don't spend all your money and take it from you. It's exactly what they do. Just say it.
Okay, we're about to have some fun on the show. Strap on. That's not a thing. She's gonna fall one of these days. One of these days she's gonna fall.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, we got to do the story.
This country is not run by the people for the people. It's run by corporations. It's run by weapons manufacturers. It's run by private military contractors.
We've been telling you that people care about policy, and people on TV, they're like, no, everybody just cares about gloss and shine and whether you're rolling up your sleeves well. But what's more impressive is policy, and that you should make equal note of that, and you most certainly have not.
My dad wrote the story of his life. It's called The Original Young Turk. It's a book on shoptyt.com. Part of the story is how I became progressive. Now, he doesn't write about that per se, but in his life story, you see, oh my God, when a community helps one another, when the government also chips in and gives you free education, anything is possible. He went from an incredibly poor olive farmer to living the American dream.
Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding. Because this is C-SPAN, and anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a Velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a. Call us now at Simon Simonson Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
You want to know how you could save money and save the planet? Hello, I got an awesome option for you guys. Aspiration.com/TYT. You plant not 1, not 5, 10 trees when you sign up. You know what trees do? Not a big deal, but one large tree can provide a day's supply of oxygen for up to 4 people. That's 40 people's oxygen just by signing up at aspiration.com/TYT. Sign up for a free spend and save account right now at aspiration.com/TYT.
That 300 million is a pretty good number. We were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion.
Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
That's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views.
Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 10 billion views.
Damn.
Guys, as we're all home, we're using the internet way more. You need your internet protected. You don't want prying eyes in there. No hackers. Dun, 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 dun. They're there. Actually, they're now more active than ever. So make sure you got a VPN. NordVPN has been with the Young Turks for a long time. They're one of the best services available. So NordVPN.com/TYT, and you get a free month extra. Plus, you get 70% off of a 3-year plan. NordVPN.com/TYT.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the conversation on TYT. I am your sometimes host, Francesca Fiorentini, quarantined, if you will, in my home. It's good to have you with us. We have such an amazing guest. You might have seen her because she is a regular contributor to TYT. She is an attorney and now an author of the book, Staying in the Game, The Playbook for Beating Workplace Sexual Harassment. Please welcome Adrienne Lawrence. Adrienne.
Hey, thank you for having me, Francesca.
Oh my God. This book, of course, I would love to have you anyway, but this book is incredible. It is a must read. It's a must have. I started reading it and I'm like, I need to buy this for everyone I know.
Aww.
It should be in every home. It should be in every workplace. And now I just want a comic book version, and I hope that happens.
Yes. Well, first I'm working on the coloring book version. That'll come first, and then we'll do comic book. But yeah, no, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That was kind of my goal in putting something out there that can be accessible to everybody.
Absolutely. And it really is. And it's a lot that you go through everything from how to identify a workplace that might be toxic or have red flags to personally what happens when you are sexually harassed, to then actually filing a complaint, and whether it's a legal complaint, whether it's an HR complaint. I mean, it's so comprehensive. And it also is chock full of examples from your personal life even. And I want to get into it all. But first, when we think about like Me Too and sexual harassment, we often focus on like the predator, right? And the perpetrator, if you will. But this doesn't. This book focuses on the target of sexual harassment. Why write it for those folks?
So when I had my sexual harassment experience at ESPN, and that wasn't my first experience with sexual harassment, but I found myself kind of just at that point where it's like I really wanted guidance, and I wanted good guidance that was research-backed and completely sound. And there was nothing out there. I looked for books, and everything I found was either a memoir or a legal reference manual. And even though I'm an attorney, these legal manuals, they don't really help because sexual harassment is rarely a legal issue. So I figured I'd go ahead and just write the book that I wanted. And that's what I did.
This book is really not a legal how-to, but you do address it. And as an attorney, I just wanted to ask, what's the importance of having a legal framework for sexual harassment, and how is it falling short?
So I would say for the everyday individual, they really do not need a legal framework for sexual harassment. Leave that stuff to the lawyers. There's a reason you have to go to school and get a license and, stay up on your credits, because the law is constantly evolving and changing. And also every jurisdiction is different. So having a legal framework as an everyday person is not what is critical. It's largely understanding behavioral impact and how I interact with you and you interact with me, and how I can deal with you without being retaliated against. But if we do stay just on the legal issue and looking at how pretty much the courts are evolving and also the standard for sexual harassment, it's the hottest mess you've ever seen. For instance, as I talk about in my book, the fact is that the legal standard in sexual harassment requires me to show that the behavior was unwelcomed. It's kind of the thought of, I'm at a workplace. I came here to work. I did not come here to be hit on or to be put down or for someone to sexually come on to me. So why I have to prove that I didn't welcome it is crazy. You should have to prove that I was down for you to, put your tongue in my ear when I really just came to work on some spreadsheets, Right. So, but the law is unfortunately written to favor men and also big corporations. So that's in part why the things in my book are so important, because it teaches you how to navigate that and gives you the skills and the strategies so you can really kind of just be a badass and kick butt when it comes to dealing with that issue, since the reality is HR, your coworkers and colleagues and everyone else is generally not necessarily going to be on your side.
Absolutely. And this is it's like a weed whacker through the entire maze of what you will come up against, from the actual harassment itself to any of the barriers that stand in your way. And it's so good. And so just broadly, how did you do the research for this? Who did you talk to? What kinds of people?
So I talked to everyone from porn stars to politicians. I really went deep in terms of seeing what people's work experiences are like, how they handled issues, what was productive for them. I also talked to the people who actually specialize in this and have degrees. Sociologists, they really have the information, and it's very meaty. And so I would interview, call people, talk to them, exchange emails, just really dig in and figure out what was best and what was most productive and could be helpful for everyone who would be reading the book. But I kept it very easy to understand and super low key and kind of fun at times. So that is something I'm pretty proud of.
I agree. And I think you accomplished all of that. I really appreciate the way it's super proactive. I think we often hear sexual harassment stories from a very passive or sort of after the fact kind of way. And again, it's very memoir based. This is so active. It is a manual, like you said. And so I just want to go into some of the, I'm sure that some of the things you learned from your own personal experiences, but also through talking to sociologists, psychologists, and other people who've dealt with this, like all the different types of harassers. I love when you go through, Adrian literally goes through all the different types of harassers. You've got the a-hole adjacent and the shameless dude. And two of the things that I noticed about those two archetypes of harassers is that you say that you should address it. And I found that really surprising. Okay, so you just tell them. And so talk to me a little bit about that. Why address the harassment?
So it's interesting you bring this up. So those kind of prototypes that I've identified, that is something that I came up with in terms of my own personal life experience and talking with everyone and doing all the research, because these were the individuals we saw continue to pop up in every workplace and that I have seen no matter what coast I'm on or industry I'm in. So I was like, you know what? I can easily categorize these people based on their patterns of behavior. And it would be super helpful to give readers an idea and tell them, who these people are so that they can hopefully identify them in their work life. And the things that I advise people on how to handle it, those deal largely with the behavioral aspects of how that individual, how that harasshole approaches things. For instance, a-hole adjacent, as you mentioned, is someone who is borderline, who's always that kind of iffy guy. Like, for instance, a lawyer I worked with, he gave me a gift card to a hotel that did not have a spa. It didn't have any place to eat. It could only be used on a room there. And it was a local hotel that did not have a chain. Those borderline things that make you go, yeah, I know what you're doing, yet they love to deny it and say you're reading too much into things. So a reason to be direct and candid in approaching it with them is because they feed off of the uncertainty and continuing to push the envelope and push boundaries. And so by letting them know, hey, this isn't okay and I see what you're doing, that should shut them down because, hey, you're really taking away their ability to claim, they really didn't know and my bad.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I think that, and of course you talk about, the ways that patriarchy and sexism enforce gender roles so that women sort of keep their mouths shut or, and especially in a workplace environment, try to preserve their jobs and believe that keeping their mouth shut, is the better way to go about things, because you don't want to cause waves and you're also scared and you need the money. And I love all of the personal examples you give and you just reclaim them and kind of learn after every single one of them, from the creepy attorney who you were interned with all summer who gave you an ulcer. Love that story. Terrible story, but it's a good story. And then I thought something that was really practical was your stealth follow-up after you were propositioned, I believe, by someone who you thought just wanted to write an article with you. Tell me about the stealth follow-up.
So that largely comes from my legal experience and creating situations where it's not he said, she said, because that's really the leverage that these companies and these harassholes have, is the fact that people lie, and people lie all the time. And so to lock that in terms of these are the facts and the events, and we remember what happened, it's the stealth follow-up in terms of maybe sending someone a message that is going to provoke a response so I can get confirmation. Because should down the line something happen and he claimed it happened one way, you will have some documented evidence to say, hey, here's the text message chain where he admitted doing X, Y, and Z. There is no question. Because as we see in this Me Too movement, it's largely he said, she said. And unfortunately, these women need hundreds of women to come forward in order for society to actually act and do something. Right. And so, it's the hope of, hey, having this evidence will be helpful. And it may not necessarily get the person fired, but at least it'll get you a really good settlement. That's for sure.
And you did have that experience, right? I mean, when you sued ESPN for sexual harassment, you had been through this before. Can you just tell me about that experience and what you learned from it?
Well, it was, it's something I had been through, and, I had kind of always sheepishly kind of gone about my way. There were times I did stand up for myself, and there were times that I reported people for nonsense. But in the situation with ESPN, I decided, I'm going to stand up because this is completely and totally disrespectful. And I will not let you speak of me as though there is some kind of romantic engagement between us, when the individual in question was really just trying to, I guess, manipulate me into something romantic, which honestly completely came out of the blue for me because just very different levels. But it was an experience that really woke me up, because the thing is I operate on logic, and it doesn't seem logical for me for companies to allow these harassholes to abound and run amok. Because essentially they're wasting company resources by distracting me from doing my job. And also they are very expensive in terms of settlements and for all the other reasons I explain in my book. And so expecting a company to just do what's logical, which is tell this person to stop, apparently that was too much to ask. So it's a matter of having to stand up for yourself.
I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm at a Wolfpack gathering.
We're growing. I see faces that I recognize, but I also see a lot of faces that I don't recognize, and that's fantastic.
We are all taking time out of our lives to be here, and that's amazing. That means we truly believe in this.
Make no mistake, everyone in this room is a leader in a Wolfpack.
Alaska, West Virginia, Montana, Georgia, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey. Everyone is here. All these folks paid with their own money and sometimes took vacation days to come here to strategize on how to get our democracy back and get money out of politics.
Or you get more political power just because you have more money. This is why it requires a constitutional amendment.
The process of winning in your state next year doesn't begin when session begins. It begins right now.
To work to a goal, something this big that you're actually making a difference of, there's very few things in the world that really compare to that feeling.
Equal rights to fair representation, rights for human beings, anti-corruption laws, and free and fair elections. That's what we are fighting for.
What were the founding fathers? Revolutionaries. And they built revolution into the document.
So Article 5 is the way we have to go.
This is how you do it.
You're in this as a team, you're in this together. The fight will always continue.
That fight is not between the left and the right. That fight is between basically greed and humanity.
So I'm asking you to put differences aside, whether you're conservative or independent or progressive, to join forces to say no more corruption.
You get beyond the fear, you take that first step, and you'll change the world.
What I want to leave you with, of course, is hope. And I want to assure you that if we keep fighting together, we're going to win together. We're going to get that convention, we're going to get that amendment, and we're going to get our democracy back. Come join us, wolf-pack.com.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
The earth is burning.
Yeah.
Not only that, but that should shake you enough, period, but that so many people in power don't seem to care.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
We have to also remember that we like to put people in prison in this country.
There is only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
A famous new author has a book out. His name is Dogan Uger. That's my dad. Okay, the name of the book is called The Original Young Turk, and it's his life story. I read it, trust me, you're gonna love it. He has such a straightforward way of telling stories that you're gonna be amused by it. It's like, wow, then I met JFK, then I was at the White House, then I started a business, then I became Businessman of the Year. It's amazing. You're gonna love the stories, and it's part of what made me progressive. Check it out at shoptyt.com.
It is wrong to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote in this country.
Look, I tell you guys, most important thing is voting in primaries. Primaries.
I hope every American will vote for the candidate and party of his choice, but vote.
We cannot continue to complain about corruption and complain about what's happening in this country and continue to vote for it.
Let's get it right this time. It could be a moment of redemption for what happened in 2016.
And with this book, I think you have a lot that you need. Not everything, but a lot. I wanted to ask you about red flags versus green flags when it comes to working environments. What's like a red flag for a workplace that you can, when you know that maybe this is not the safest place and that maybe this place protects harassment?
So one of the very, very well-known and established red flags is what I call dude overload. That's where there are an exponential number of men in the workplace compared to women. Unfortunately, the research has confirmed, completely doubled down, confirmed the fact that when there aren't a sufficient number of women in that environment, then men pretty much act like barbaric heathens, and they engage in sexual harassment, a lot of harassment, and nonsense. And so it's something that you will want to definitely keep in mind if you're entering an all-male space, that there is a very, very high likelihood that you will suffer sexual harassment and to be prepared for it. The thing is, we don't want women or people labeled as others to avoid those kind of homogenous environments just because they are homogenous. We do need to incorporate more people into that who are different And that's very important for our entire workforce and also for gender equality and racial equality as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's such a double-edged sword or chicken or the egg type thing where it's like you point out that women specifically going into industries that are dominated by men. And I know because I'm a stand-up comic and I'm very familiar with that. But, you know, women in STEM or women in, you know, sports outlets and news outlets, like that it's a chicken or the egg situation because the representation is super important, but then also, you know, you're going to be battling even more potential sexual harassment and misconduct. I guess I wanted to know what, by the way, so let me just say for the viewers that all the other categories of like the things to watch out for are hilarious too, like rainbows and unicorns, which was very funny, which was like if you're like, oh, what is it like working at blankety blank, you know, corporation? And they're like, oh, it's great. It's wonderful. My boss is really special. Adrian says that is a red flag.
Yeah.
I also
it's one of those things where, you know, people all they do is give glowing reviews and it's wonderful. It's a job. There should be something potentially negative being said about the experience or maybe someone who works there. The fact that this person is just glowing reviews, no, they hide something.
Now, what about feelings of wanting to quit? You know, I think that a lot of people, when they face sexual harassment, they think about the path of least resistance, right? It's like, you know what? It'll be easier if I either keep my head down and don't say anything or deal with it, which could lead to something worse, or I'm just going to leave. In fact, maybe I'll leave the entire industry. How do you address that?
You know, it's really difficult because the vast majority of people who experience sexual harassment end up leaving their job, and some definitely do leave their careers in its entirety, especially given maybe how significant the experience was for them. And that's really problematic because it essentially gives the power to harass holes. They're using power and using maybe gender or sex to make you so uncomfortable or subjugate you in a way where it can break your spirit and you can want to leave that entire industry. And the thing is, we need people to understand, number one, what is going on. Research shows that if you understand why that person is doing these power plays or coming on to you, then it's actually a lot easier psychologically to cope. And that'll make it more likely that you stay in your job and stay in your position, and you're able to kind of keep your head on straight through the entire unfortunate experience. But the thing is, people really just need to know and be fully informed about what sexual harassment really looks like and really is, because the vast majority of people have no idea. And they kind of just feel like maybe they're bullied out of a job when really what happened was a form of sexual harassment.
Right. And I think that what you go through in this book is also how to read people, kind of just how to understand who you're talking to, who you work with, and a little bit how to play it. And honestly, you know, it's the manual we need because it really does, rather than just be a legal framework, it helps us tomorrow, today, yesterday, rather than waiting on the world to change. You're like, no, this is what you need to be equipped with. I had a question about, you know, HR departments. You know, in my personal life, I had a situation where I didn't actually tell HR because I knew that they would not handle it well. That what I needed was for them to tell this person that he needed to stop, but that I didn't want to get him fired. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I knew that this HR department was so ham-fisted that they would have fired him. And he was not a superior to me, right? Yeah. And he was someone who just he was ignorant. He didn't understand. And eventually I had to personally confront him and talk to him, and it was fine. It worked. I did not feel threatened. It was actually really great. I didn't get anyone involved. But are there better HR departments and worse HR departments? I don't know. What have you heard from the people you interviewed?
So it does really depend on the work environment. I'd say the vast majority of HR departments do fall short because in part they treat sexual harassment as though it is a legal issue. And so, you know, it's like, you know, they put the walls up as opposed to treating it as though it is a behavioral issue, because that's exactly what it is. So just as managers handle issues of behavior, of maybe tardiness, they also need to handle sexual harassment this same kind of way in terms of you're bullying that person, you need to leave them alone instead of treating it like a legal issue. Because of course, when a business faces a potential threat of litigation in some way, they'll go full guns on, and they really don't look at the heart of the issue when it can be dismissed so easily by just telling the person, hey, that behavior is not cool, don't do that, let's just move on. And that's the unfortunate part of sexual harassment in workplaces. Plus, we live in a society that's patriarchal. So there's almost this given thought that men are entitled to our bodies, or maybe we just can't hack it emotionally, and maybe we're too soft. And that's also very problematic because that'll play out with HR departments where they just said, like ESPN, my experience at ESPN was that's just how it works here. You're going to have to get used to it. And so it almost ends up going back to, that's why you have to make sure the kind of workplace you're going into, you got to look for those red, green, yellow flags so you have a good idea of what you're getting into.
Can I just follow up by asking you, I know you mentioned about how labor unions can be a good indicator of a healthy workplace that might have better sexual harassment or assault policy and practices. What specifically, I forgot, I'm trying to find where you mentioned that. What's the difference of having, you call them, let's see, sexual harassment complaint protocols? Like what are better protocols than just looking at this legalistic framework?
For instance, with unions, one protocol that's very helpful is having a representative there to represent your rights so that you're not alone. It's essentially, you have a buddy to come with you. Also, so you're not gaslit in the situation. The thing I think some people do not really fully appreciate, though, with unions that they can get a little shocked about is that if one employee or if an employee is in a union, then the harasser is probably in that same union, and that individual is also entitled to rights. So they may also have a buddy. But the good thing is to have someone looking out for your rights and mediating and making sure that the company or the agency or government employer gives you the rights and the respect that you are entitled to in whatever investigation is conducted or however the sexual harassment is handled.
Adrienne, where did you find the strength to do this? Were you just bursting with stories and were like, I have to write this manual, or that's it? Like, what compelled you? What gave you that strength?
It was the experience of having been at ESPN and having my lawsuit out there. And I was in a situation where just so many people had reached out to me for help and they needed answers. And then on top of that, there were so many of my colleagues that their careers became jeopardized because they tried to help me behind closed doors. And I ended up having to use my game theory strategies to put them in situations so that, they could get an exit package that met their needs, or they could get back in the industry and not get blacklisted. And there were just so many issues that we needed answers for. So I thought, my God, I just need to get those answers and give them to the world.
Thank you so much for doing that. Adrienne Lawrence, her book, Staying in the Game, The Playbook for Beating Workplace Sexual Harassment. Get this book. Get it for everyone you know and love. It is so smart. It is so funny. Thank you so much, Adrienne.
Thank you.
All right. That does it for the conversation. I am Francesca Fiorentini, and it's been real. Bye-bye.
What we're talking about is the inevitability of infection. If you're an elderly Hispanic person, you should not go back to work under these conditions. But if you are a young, healthy 25-year-old Hispanic man, you should probably be thinking about going back to work, especially if you're not living with somebody who is 60 or over.
All right, back on the Young Turks today. Jake Huger, John Irola with you guys. Absolutely jam-packed show today. So real quick, as we do in the beginning of each show these days, it is super important, cannot be understated, how important it is to keep Young Turks healthy and sustainable. So tyt.com/go. That's our audience fundraising drive. We're trying to reach 200,000 every month because that's the way to keep us sustainable, keep the light in the darkness, if you will. And there's plenty of darkness, as we're going to get to in a second today. So let's see where we are on it. All right, 108,487. Got a long way to go. Any amount helps. Obviously, don't give if you can't. Be careful and make sure you're taking care of yourself and your family first. But if you can, it is deeply appreciated. All right, John, let's do it.
Okay, launch right into it. Let's do it then. You've probably heard a lot this week about OBAMAGATE. And the reason you've heard a lot about it is because Donald Trump desperately, desperately wants you to be thinking about that and not the, 1,000 to 2,000 people dying every single day from the coronavirus pandemic that he has botched the response to. He certainly doesn't seem to know what it is that he's talking about, and that has become increasingly clear throughout this week. Take a look at his recent interview with Maria Bartiromo.
KT McFarland the other day, I watched where she was knock, knock, FBI, the FBI, okay? This was all Obama. This was all Biden. These people were corrupt. The whole thing was corrupt, and we caught them. We caught them. And what you saw just now, I watched Biden yesterday. He could barely speak. He was on Good Morning America, right? What kind of stuff?
Explain to our audience what this means, because, this is a serious thing. They are tracking phone calls. They were tracking a phone call of, I guess, Kislyak. And you're not supposed to.
I'll tell you what it means. It's very simple. So even before I got elected, you remember the famous The Two Lovers, right? Strzok and Page. The insurance policy. She's going to win, but just in case she does it, we have an insurance policy. That means that if I won, they're going to try and take me out. That's all it means. It's very simple. It's an insurance policy. So she's going to win. Isn't she, darling? Isn't she going to win?
Okay, so the issue there seems to be that she tried to tee him up with, supposedly what she's concerned about with OBAMAGATE. And based on the new information that he alluded to, he then did the thing that he's been doing at rallies for a couple of years where he pretends to be involved in a sexual relationship with a coworker or whatever. He pretends that he's one of them. I don't know what it is, but I know that he didn't assert any crime. He made a bunch of weird, kind of creepy allusions, and that's basically it. And that's the most specific he's been about OBAMAGATE, a topic he has been talking about all week.
He's tweeted about it. He was asked by a different reporter 3 days ago, Philip Rucker, so what is the crime that you're charging in OBAMAGATE? At the time, he said, you know it, it's very obvious. No, it's not obvious. No, we have no idea what it is. You're number one, you're making it up. Number two, you didn't tell us what you're making up. You forgot that part. Okay, so 3 days later, you've had a lot of time to think, to talk to friends, to call up Sean Hannity and come up with an alleged crime. Bartiromo, a huge ally of the president, throws up a softball. Okay, Mr. President, schmuck of the world, you must have thought of a crime by now. You're calling it the worst political crime in American history. What is it? Katie McFarland, knock knock, FBI. What is that? What are you talking about? I in that particular case, I literally have no idea what he's saying, and no one does. Then he goes and turns around and goes, Biden. No one can figure out what he's saying. All right, Biden's got issues. Your issues are 1,000 times worse. You're obviously incoherent in the answer where you are criticizing Biden for incoherence. It's unreal. And then, okay, so what's Obama's crime? Stork and Page, they were lovers. Okay, fine, they were lovers. And then what? What did Obama do? If it's the crime of the century, what did Obama do?
Yeah.
And he can't answer it.
Yeah, so why don't we show a few examples of what you were alluding to there. So we've got the one tweet that it's succinct. It says Obamagate. The second one says Obamagate makes Watergate look small time. So again, very specific. I don't.
What is it? If it makes Watergate, which Nixon resigned over and he was going to get impeached and convicted over, if it makes it look like small time, what the F is it?
It is. Look,
Fox News is cancer. Anyway, keep going, John.
Yeah, it's the same as him typing squirrel and trying to get hashtag squirrel trending. That's all it is.
Except
he knows.
It works.
Well, of course it works.
That's why I said Fox News is a cancer. Because Fox News then takes it and goes, Obamagate, Obamagate, Obama. Remember they did this with Solyndra? You don't remember what, like most people don't remember Solyndra. It was a solar power company. They didn't know anything that it had done wrong. The administration hadn't done anything wrong. They just kept saying Solyndra. And then people are like, Solyndra. And then they forgot why they were mad.
Yeah.
And Fast and Furious. They're like, oh, yeah, guns and do something. Fortune did a exhaustive research on it and found out that it was actually right-wing gun advocates that had created the problem. It doesn't matter to this day. Fast and Furious, Fast and Furious. They just have these Benghazi, 9 different investigations. Obama administration did nothing wrong, but they have these code words that just trigger the emotions of right-wingers. And Obama, I hate him. He's black. I mean, because of Obamagate and Fast and Furious. That's what I meant. That's what I meant. Oh, shut up already. And it's Fox News that brainwashes 40% of this country into believing this moron. Name a goddamn crime. You can't do it because there is no crime.
Well, no, and so that's the thing. That's one of the things that makes it so lazy, is that if we wanted to identify things that Barack Obama or Joe Biden have done that are either deeply unethical or indeed criminal, we could do that. They don't even care to actually try to do that, partially because many of the things that Obama did that we were so critical of while he was president, they don't actually have a problem of, and they certainly don't want to set a precedent where a Republican president can't do the same sort of things. They sort of have to be vague because they don't want to set a precedent that any abuse of power would stop them from doing the same thing in the future. And on that note, by the way, whatever it ends up that Fox News, when they finally define what this is supposed to be about, you can rest assured that whatever it is, they would definitely be okay with Donald Trump doing it. It is so thoroughly and obviously a distraction. And I get it. If you're a right-winger right now, it's kind of a rough time. You thought you'd be able to run on the economy. You can't. The pandemic has been an absolute disaster, not just in objective sense, the human cost, but obviously Donald Trump does not care to do anything about it. And so you desperately need something to distract people. And there are perfectly valid things to criticize both Joe Biden and Barack Obama for, but they're too lazy to do that. It reminds me, by the way, a lot of when the impeachment was going on and Trump was saying it was totally fine, the phone call was fine, it was just about corruption. And days went by and weeks went by, and they didn't even care enough about the argument they were making to come up with one corrupt individual or business that wasn't Joe Biden related. Like, just to provide cover for it. Because while these are very stupid people, they also believe that the people they're trying to persuade are even dumber, more gullible. And I'm getting the same things here. They've got producers. They've got graphics people and all that. They could put together a case if they felt they actually had to. But it's just a distraction. The more of the news they can make about Obamagate and the less about coronavirus, that they see that as a win. And that is why you can track it. Media Matters, week over week, the coverage of coronavirus on Fox News is dropping like 10% every week. And that's been consistent for some time now.
Yeah, so show us the other video, John.
Yeah, let's go to, so we had Maria Bartiromo. Here's another time when a reporter just tried to get him. If this is something you're excited and passionate about, just tell us what the crime is.
Mr. President, in one of your Mother's Day tweets, you appear to accuse President Obama of the biggest political crime in American history by far. Those were your words. What crime exactly are you accusing President Obama of committing, and do you believe the Justice Department should prosecute him?
Obamagate. It's been going on for a long time. It's been going on from before I even got elected, and it's a disgrace that it happened. And if you look at what's gone on, and if you look at now all of this information that's being released, and from what I understand, that's only the beginning. Some terrible things happened, and it should never be allowed to happen in our country again. And you'll be seeing what's going on over the coming weeks. But I wish you'd write honestly about it. But unfortunately, you choose not to do so. Yeah, John, please.
Crime. What is the crime exactly that you're accusing him of?
You know what the crime is. The crime is very obvious to everybody. All you have to do is read the newspapers, except yours.
Yeah,
no crime.
He
didn't bother making one up.
Deeply insulting. Yeah, and look, we really fast, Cenk, we always identify the projection from the right. And so for a couple of years now, when Donald Trump has tried to evade any sort of accountability by implying that whatever the concern is, he just says it 3 times, like Ukraine, 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 or Russia, 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 or whatever, they're literally just saying Obamagate, Obamagate, Obamagate. And we would love to know what is underneath that, but there is literally nothing there. They've been projecting for years, telling you what their strategy is going to be, and you're watching it on Twitter and in interviews day by day.
Okay. First of all, if you put it in a B-rate movie, it'd be a bad movie, and even for a B-rate movie, you'd say it's too over the top. A character this buffoonish, this ridiculous. If you put it in a parody, people would be like, "Where's the punchline? He's just too stupid." They're like, "It's been going on a long time. What is it? Everybody knows it. It's in all the newspapers except yours and every other one." Okay, I get the evil part. Unfortunately, a lot of the folks that are in charge of this country still don't understand existential threat to our form of government. So, but what's amazing is how lazy he is. You've had all this time. Think of a reason why we're supposed to hate Obama and how he committed the worst crime in American political history. You're so lazy you couldn't think for 1 minute of a crime. You know what it is? Everybody knows what it is. He looks like the dumbest kid in school, where you kind of feel sorry for him. And you make sure people don't, pick on him because he's obviously has mental issues. But unfortunately, he's the president of the United States, and 40% of this country is both brainwashed by Fox News and so painfully stupid that they look at a guy that dumb and go, "That is my dear leader. That is the guy I look up to." And Democrats, for God's sake, are you ever going to fight him? I mean, you have this punching bag of a moron as your opponent. Who's on TV right now representing Democrats?
Yeah.
Who's on TV right now saying the things that we're saying?
Yeah.
Like literally nobody. I'm not saying that people on TV don't oppose him. I'm not saying Joe Scarborough is not opposed to him. I'm not saying the pundits don't tweak him, but they have no sense of the real danger here. The real danger, guys, is he's not joking. If he wins re-election, he's going to arrest his political opponents. If you don't realize that, you're an idiot. You're so naive, and all you do is project, "Oh, well, I wouldn't arrest my political opponents. I would do political theater, so I assume he's doing likewise." No, he means it. He will arrest them. You're so dumb. And Democrats, where are you? Where are you? Where's the Biden surrogates? You should be shredding him right now. Shredding him. And instead, he controls the narrative with no pushback from the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Super fast. You know what's... It's like sort of funny. It's so shallow. So the way that the blank gate thing works, that format, is that you put gate at the end as a callback to Watergate, and the first thing is the thing that's an issue, or at least like a label that refers to the thing, but they just put his name.
Yeah.
Like they didn't even try hard enough for the label to imply that there's substance there. It's just, I don't know, Biden gate, whatever, just something. I don't know.
Okay,
Anyway.
I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the Democrats one more time because, look, guys, it seems absurd to us, to all rational human beings. So the scandal is Obama's existence, and yes, to a lot of the right wing, and definitely for Donald Trump, that is the scandal. The fact that a black man, a liberal, whatever, he became president. A guy who insulted Donald Trump became president. That's Obamagate, okay? But a lot of Democrats, because they're so elitist and snobs and idiots, they're sitting up in their council going, the guy who's attacking Obama. Obama's very popular. That will go poorly for him. I think this is a great way for us to drum up some extra excitement. Okay, you don't get it.
Yeah.
Since you guys are deaf, mute, and dumb, you're not going to respond. He's going to spend the next 6 months tearing Obama and Biden apart. Biden's in a cave. At best, Obama is leaking tepid phone calls. Woo! The rest of the Democratic Party is invisible. And so it's going to work because it's going to be unopposed. For God damn it, get in the fight. Get in the fight.
Yeah, and really fast. If they weren't the worst of the worst ever, Obamagate could be massive rise in deportations, except that it can't be that because they want to deport literally everyone. It could be expansion of drone strikes, but it can't be that because he does even more drone strikes. It could be extrajudicial killings, except it can't be that because they desperately want to do that. It could be all of these things that we, and for a longer time, you criticized Obama for, but they don't want to criticize Obama for any of those things. It has to be something that has sort of the idea of corruption or something like that, but it can't be specific because they're desperately trying to do all of that. But anyway, we do have a poll because we want to crowdsource an idea of what this is. And so we've got a poll up that you can go to at tyt.com/polls/Obamagate. And you can say if you think it's the day Flynn got arrested, that Obama wore a tan suit, that Michelle Obama tried to get kids to eat vegetables, something terrorist fist jab, or maybe the fact that he is, we have discovered an African-American male and needs to be locked up for that reason. So you can go to tyt.com/polls/Obamagate to register your idea of what it is today.
I really think we should have putting mustard on his hamburger on that list. I mean, that was something else Fox News criticized him for. And in these times, you can see how legitimate that criticism was.
Yeah. Here's an Obamagate that he lied about his support for a public option or something stronger and didn't push for it when he had the opportunity to. Except no, they actually want to take away your health care. Or it could be that he could have helped to protect American democracy and make sure that people have the access and the ability to actually vote, except they want to shred democracy too. All of these things that we criticized, they're doing worse versions, so they can't actually criticize him. It has to be ephemeral. It has to be nonsensical. Anyway, why don't we take our first break?
Yeah. When we come back, more rage.
We are onto something that is going to be amazing, but what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats. We're going to fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free health care for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single-payer health care, debt-free college, and we are going to get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're going to do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, The buck needs to stop, and it's going to stop with us. It's going to stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Justice Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a betting.
Absolutely not.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Guys, not a big deal, but you're about to save the planet. So here's how it works. We're planting 10 trees for everyone who signs up at aspiration.com/TYT. Aspiration and TYT are doing this together. Do you have any idea what 10 trees do? Hold on, let me explain. First of all, one tree can provide a day's supply of oxygen for up to 4 people. I plant 10 trees, or you plant 10 trees by going to aspiration.com/TYT. That's 40 people. You're giving oxygen to 40 people. What are you gonna argue with that? You can't argue with that. But if you do, during 1 year, a mature tree will absorb more than 48 pounds of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and release oxygen in exchange. We capture the carbon dioxide, release the oxygen. Aspiration.com/TYT. You save money and you save the planet. What else do you want to do? Come on, aspiration.com/TYT. All right, not only that, you can plant a tree with every purchase once you're in Aspiration and you have an account. There's no way this is going to get better. Oh my God, no deposits used for oil drills or pipelines. Oh my God, up to 10% cash back for socially conscious shopping. Hello. With Aspiration Spend and Save, you get the world's first cashback account that lets you track the impact of your spending, all managed through one intuitive app. Would a hero sign up for Aspiration through aspiration.com/TYT? I guess.
So this is what democracy looks like. We have to be aggressive, we have to be powerful, we have to go hard, and we have to go for what is ours because they are not going to give it to us.
The system is flawed. I mean, the primary system is archaic, stupid, made up.
If you think that accomplishing a leftist movement here is going to be easy, you're wrong. We have to fight.
It has begun.
The powerful do not give up their power easily.
No.
2020 is everything.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Jenkin, John with you guys. So let's go to our comment section first. Of course, for our members and tyt.com/join to become a member. Nipple Pierce Jenkins Skinny Jeans writes in, Obamagate, what about the Trump-demic? That would require the Democrats being a tiny bit clever. It would require the Democrats to actually exist. Of course, when they're beating up progressives, they're lions. Remember when they thought Bernie Sanders might win? They were all screaming their heads off. Now that Trump might win, there's a disastrous poll out from CNN. They're like, whatever. Callista says, challenging us, the crime is entrapment. The crime is warrantless wiretapping. Come on, guys, be intellectually consistent at least. The NSA spying is finally hurting the right. It's finally at a point where we might be able to end it, and you're turning a blind eye to that because of Trump. I love you, but I disagree. So first of all, there was no entrapment of Flynn. They said either he's going to tell the truth or we're going to get him lying. That is prosecutor 101. That is what they do in every single case. There's nothing wrong with that. Warrantless wiretapping. No, they followed procedure on Flynn, and they got him, and he admitted twice in court to lying to the FBI. So, look, man, we criticized Obama for warrantless wiretapping. We criticized him for all the things that John talked about in the last segment, and we did it over and over and over again. if you think the right wing is actually genuine and that they're going to end warrantless wiretapping, you're out of your mind. Totally out of your mind. No, they're just going to turn warrantless wiretapping to their advantage. They don't care. Like, they're using it as a prop. You think they're going to change the law? No way. No way. In fact, Mitch McConnell right now, I did a video about it 2 days ago, is proposing an amendment to the Patriot Act that would allow the government to do warrantless wiretapping of anyone. Bill Barr would be able to warrantlessly wiretap anyone he says is quote unquote under investigation. Doesn't have to clarify, doesn't have to go to court, doesn't need a warrant, doesn't need any of that. It would be a massive expansion of the Patriot Act, brought to you by the Republican Party. If you think they're even 1% on your side, it's not remotely true. So get real. Anyway, but I do love you challenging us. I love when you guys do that. So keep it going in that sense. All right, last things here because we're running out of time. Allison Macklin says on YouTube Super Chat, and thank you for using that. So grateful for you guys. Wish it could be more. Hope Anna and her mom are okay. And of course, we're all hoping for that. And the Progressive Linguist says, glad to see an acknowledgement of the existential threat to our democracy. We're heading full speed ahead towards fascism, and it's terrifying. Much love to Anna.
Yeah.
You should have no hesitation in calling it fascism now. What they did in overturning the law in the Flynn case, what they are doing with invented stuff about OBAMAGATE and their desire to lock up political opponents, their attack against the press, you name it.
If I were a senator or congressman, the first person I would call to testify about the biggest political crime and scandal in the history of the USA, by far, is former President Obama. He knew everything. Do it, Lindsey Graham. Just do it. No more Mr. Nice Guy. No more talk. And we're going to have Lindsey Graham's response. Turns out he's not necessarily buying it. But Cenk, what do you think about the prospect, both of what you think would happen and how excited you think Republicans would be about bringing in the former vice president during this time to testify about the early beginnings of the investigations into Trump and all of them?
So this is always how it begins, where Trump asked for something completely unreasonable / borderline insane. And he's like, he made up Obamagate, never clarified what the crime is. To this day, hasn't said what the crime is. It's totally invented, called it the worst political crime ever. Then he tells the Republicans, you will do as you're told, and you'll make up a fake investigation of the former president and try to crucify him politically. The Republicans go, oh no, on the first day, oh no, Mr. President, I mean, don't be silly. We can't do that. And then they will. And then the Democrats will barely oppose it. And then the rest of the media will go, oh, heaven forfend, it's not exactly right, but we'll call it largely 50-50. Fox News will call it 1,000-0 and say Obama brought back Beelzebub and committed treason and made a deal with Hades. And by the end, Obama's reputation will be destroyed, Biden will lose the election, and the Republican Party will do exactly what Trump tells them to do.
Yeah. Well, there's a bit of a speed bump before we get to all that, and that is that Lindsey Graham, as of right now at least, is saying, I don't think now's the time for me to do that. I don't know if that's even possible. I have grave concerns about the role of executive privilege. Oh, yeah, he totally does. He's really worried about the expansion of executive power and all kinds of issues. I understand President Trump's frustration, but be careful what you wish for. Just be careful what you wish for. And goes on to say, I'm very, very sensitive to the separation of powers, executive branch. We do have oversight of it as Congress, appropriate oversight, but hauling a former president before an oversight committee, I don't think that's been done before. And presidentially, I'd be careful what I wish for. And look, I don't know if that's supposed to be like a warning to him that maybe Trump doesn't want to set the precedent that former presidents get hauled in to testify about what they did while they were president. I don't know. That's what it sort of feels like. But I don't really normally think of Lindsey Graham as currently having the wherewithal to do that in regards to Trump, a person who loves to, slap him down from time to time.
Yeah. So at first I thought they were referring to Obama's the most popular politician in the country. Why would we put him on TV? Maybe. He's hiding, doing nothing. He's sitting there like a sucker, just sitting in his home, super comfortable, doing nothing to fight Trump. So why would you stir up that hornet's nest? Then I realized, no, that's not what he's saying. He's saying, Yeah, Trump, you knucklehead. If you lose, and we will then be setting a precedent for pursuing you on criminal charges, bringing you in front of Congress, making you testify, and then charging you. You don't want that. That's why he's saying like 4 times, be careful what you wish for. Well, no, but Lindsey Graham's wrong about that too. If they bring Obama to testify, and they even do whatever it is that they are imagining and charging him with crimes or whatever it is, right? The minute that a Democrat did that to Trump, first of all, they would never do that to Trump. Immediately, Biden would say, "We look forwards, not backwards. We're so sorry to Donald Trump," and kiss his ass after, even if he won, right? Even if Biden won, he would never lay a glove on Trump afterwards. Never, never. What are you, stupid, Lindsey Graham? That would never happen. The Democratic Party is filled with weaklings. But even if they did do that, Republicans would just turn around and go, "Oh, no, we never thought that ex-presidents should testify." But you guys called an ex-president to testify. I don't care. No, we didn't. No. And Mitch McConnell does it every single time. And the press goes 50-50. I can't tell.
Yeah, 100%. Can I just read one more thing? Because this I sort of disagree with. It's a Justice Department memo saying, "It is just as important to the independence of the executive that the actions of the president should not be subjected to the questioning by the Congress after he has completed his term of office, as that his actions should not be questioned while he is serving as president." And I will say that I will add that to the list of Justice Department memos that I don't give a damn about. I understand that that does inform how they act. But look, if this wasn't nonsense, yeah, I think the idea that presidents, as long as they can slide through to the end of their term, then they're good for the rest of their life, no matter what they've done. I hate that, and I've hated that my entire life. How many times have we criticized Barack Obama's looking forward, not looking back mentality? It's just that if you're going to bring them in, maybe bring them in for the things that they actually did, the harmful things that ended lives and did all the damage. This is obviously just it's an election ploy.
John, not only do we do that all the time, we did that earlier in this video. So,
yeah, that's true.
In terms of criticizing that philosophy, no, that Justice Department memo was garbage. But the reason it's relevant here is that was Donald Trump's Justice Department saying that you should not bring ex-presidents in to testify in front of Congress. And now the president goes out there and goes, "Well, obviously, we should bring in ex-presidents to testify in front of Congress." Why does he know that his Justice Department wrote that memo? No. If they try to get him to read it, would he read it? Not past a half a page. And so did he bother checking? Of course not. He's the world's laziest guy. Even if he did know, would he care? No. Being hypocritical is totally irrelevant as long as the other side is not good at calling you out on it and Fox News has your back. And so that's how this game is played.
Okay, so why don't we transition to some of the testimony? We got 2 days of a couple of spicy exchanges that we can talk about here, starting with Dr. Fauci. Yesterday, among other things, Dr. Fauci talked about during his Senate testimony that the idea that we should be in a rush to reopen schools might be a bad idea, saying, "I think we'd better be careful if we're not cavalier in thinking that children are completely immune to the deleterious effects. You're right in the numbers that children in general do much, much better than adults and the elderly, and particularly those with underlying conditions. But I am very careful and hopefully humble in knowing that I don't know everything about this disease, and that's why I'm very reserved in making broad predictions." So he's saying basically pump the brakes. A lot of what he hears said about kids in the coronavirus turns out not to be true. The idea that they can't spread it is simply not true. The idea that they are immune to it is not true. Kids have died from the coronavirus, continue to. Now we're seeing crop up in more than a dozen U.S. states and a number of other countries an associated syndrome that looks like Kawasaki's that seems to be affecting kids predominantly that had coronavirus. So these are reasons to be a little bit concerned. But overall, the message is just, let's chill for a bit. And Trump was not happy about that, as you'll see.
He wants to play all sides of the equation. I think we're going to have a tremendous fourth quarter. I think we're going to have a transitional third quarter. And I think we're going to have a phenomenal next year. I feel that we are going to have a country that's ready to absolutely have one of its best years. Next year, with all of the stimulus and all of the fact that it's a pent-up demand like I haven't seen. And you see it right now. These two really professional, good governors that do such a, work so hard. I know both of them very well. One happens to be a Democrat, okay? But we've worked together, and I think we've worked together very well. And one, you would expect me to say that, but it happens to be true, okay? Really good job, too. But we've worked very, very well together. They want to get their states open. Some governors and some perhaps partisans, maybe for election reasons, don't want to have their states open. And then some shouldn't open them quite yet. You know, they're not ready. They went through a lot and they're not quite ready. But no, we're opening our country. People want it open. The schools are going to be open.
So, look, yeah, he acknowledges there, which is nice, that some aren't ready. What he's not saying is that many of the states that are currently in the process of reopening do not meet the White House guidelines for doing so. But he either wasn't aware of those guidelines or doesn't care about them. So he's not raising any concerns that they are literally not going by the advice that he says he and the White House are providing.
The main thing I'm worried about is they're definitely coming for Dr. Fauci. So Trump saying there he's playing both sides.
Yeah.
What does that mean? So he's not playing either side. He's telling you what the science is to the best of his ability with the information that they have at the moment. But Donald Trump doesn't view things that way. He doesn't view it as, oh, okay, you're a scientist telling me science, or you're a doctor telling me medical information. He views the entire world as you're either with Donald Trump or you're against Donald Trump. So if you say something that doesn't jive with what I say, that's it. You're against Donald Trump, and now you're playing the other side, the Democratic side. And every once in a while, you come and tell me good things, and so now that you're playing my side, you're playing both sides. No, he's trying to navigate your incompetence and stupidity, and without telling you that, because then you'll fire him immediately because you have such thin skin. But they're coming for him. And look, again, Democrats can't make their case. He had already retweeted somebody saying fire Dr. Fauci from a couple of weeks ago. Where the Democratic surrogate saying, wait, did you mean to fire Fauci over a tweet? Were you supportive of that? Or do you have mental problems that you don't know what you're tweeting? But the president of the United States willy-nilly sometimes makes international policy or national policy that has international impact through his tweets, and he doesn't even know what he's tweeting because he's mentally incompetent. But no, there's no Democrats, there's no nothing. So Fauci's out here twisting in the wind. So here comes Fox News, and they're going to try to finish.
Yeah. I think we have a little bit more of Trump on Fauci.
When you say Dr. Fauci is playing both sides, are you suggesting that the advice
Well,
he's giving to you is different?
I was surprised by his answer, actually, because, it's just, to me, it's not an acceptable answer, especially when it comes to schools. The only thing that would be acceptable, as I said, is professors, teachers, etc., over a certain age. I think they ought to take it easy for another few weeks, 5 weeks, 4 weeks, who knows?
Yeah.
Look, here's what would be acceptable. If Trump said, Fauci's a doctor, I believe him, and I think his medical advice is excellent. But that's only one component of the equation here. And I have to think about other things, including the economy, and we have to do a balancing act. And that's a painful balancing act. But it is something we have to do. And we're not yet ready to make a decision on reopening the schools in the fall. But obviously, we'll take all that into account. And that's why he is my advisor and I'm the president who takes all that into account and then makes a decision. That would be what an intelligent person would say. Instead, he's like, Fauci doesn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I'm interested to find out how much longer Fauci lasts, but I'm a lot more interested in what the consequences of, governors and regular people following Trump's continued horrible misinformation / advice will be. I mean, we're still losing. Like what have we lost? 1,700 people so far today already. But we're not supposed to care about that, and many don't. It has totally been normalized. It's not the fact that 85,000 people have died. People don't have the same level of horror and shock about that as they did when 50 died. It's actually less now, and it's going to get worse. We have done what we've done so far to flatten the curve by having the lockdowns. We don't have a vaccine. We don't have a better treatment, but we're sending people out there, and they At one point when they were pushing to reopen and everything, I was saying, you know what you could do? You could pretend that you were anything other than a heartless monster trying to grind up the working class to, grease the gears of Wall Street by pushing for reopening, but also making tests available and doing contact tracing and all of that. And they wouldn't do that. So I have a lower threshold. You could wear a mask, pretend that people should take the most minimal, inexpensive safety precautions, but they won't even do that. Don't you think it's a little bit weird that the right-wing media that every day is pushing for people to just run back out there and reclaim their freedoms don't ever say anything about the photos that came out from Wisconsin of the packed bars or anything like that? They don't cover the people who are, they're spitting and wiping their nose on people working at supermarkets. Imagine if you were actually serious about these freedoms being restored. Wouldn't you hate that people do stuff like that and make those with justifiable, constitutionally grounded desires to get back out there look bad? But they don't talk about any of that. They talk about the need to reopen. They attack the quarantines. They attack social distancing. They attack literally using masks at all. We're not supposed to say things that make us sound crazy. It seems like the strategy is to get as many people killed as possible. But I can't even keep up anymore with how irresponsible, down to the lowest levels. Don't even wear a mask.
Yeah. So some of the stories that John mentioned, including the crowded bars in Wisconsin today, we're going to discuss in the post game for the members. That's tyt.com/join to become a member. Or if you're on YouTube, click the join button below. And John, they claim that they care so much about Benghazi because 4 Americans died. Now, they found no wrongdoing, but they're like, it doesn't matter if there was no wrongdoing. 4 Americans died. We have over 80,000 Americans dead now. They're like, who cares? It's become like Lord of the Flies. They're like, let's reopen. And if the old and the sick die, well, we had to get it done. Yeah. And so these are the panel. These are the people who said we should be worried about death panels. Apparently, they don't mind death panels at all.
Yeah. Look, I don't know what the Fox News host group email is called, but you might as well call it death panel. And they apparently had a meeting, and they came out in agreement about what the narrative should be. Anyway, why don't we take our second break?
All right, we'll be right back. Hey guys, we're doing our audience funding drive to keep Young Turks strong, vibrant, healthy, get that progressive message out. What I want to do now is shout out some of your names that contributed. In this case, what we're doing is random names. It doesn't matter how much you gave. It's tyt.com/go and every dollar matters. So let me do some shout outs now. Edwin Urbina gave $27. Love you, Edwin. Thank you. Michael Garza, $9. Brandon Bongard, $50. Thank you. Jan and Lynn Pizzo, $127. Love it. Thank you. Ken Carey, $5. Thank you, Ken. Really appreciate it. Nick Fagan, $5. Beth Simon, $3. Ruby Church, $5. Love you guys. Love every single one of you. Super hard times. Appreciate every dollar that you give to us to get all of our messages out there. So one more person here, or actually 2 people, Cameron and Pamela Bartram. And they included a message. And let me read you the first part of it. My son introduced me to TYT about a year ago. Prior to that time, I never really got into politics beyond voting for Obama twice and Hillary, and only because she was better than Trump, though not by much. TYT introduced me to Bernie, who I'd never heard of till last year, and never knew he'd been in the running for the 2016 election. So I love that we're getting the message out there. That's exactly why we're doing tyt.com/go. I was an independent at the time and lived in Florida, which had closed primaries. Seeing all the wonderful things that Bernie wanted to accomplish for our country got me excited about staying informed about the political landscape. For the first time, I actually paid attention to what was going on in politics and contributing monthly to a politician's campaign, which I'd never done before. Watching TYT became as part of the daily routine as eating and sleeping, and despite all the bad things that were happening in the world, we stayed hopeful that Bernie would be able to turn it around. And of course, she mentioned Super Tuesday. She also talked about being disappointed with Obama. Her husband, who was a Republican, flipped over to being a Democrat just to vote for Bernie. Now look, guys, we didn't get it this time, but don't worry. We stay in the fight and we get the message out, and we will definitely win next time. Let's make all that happen at tyt.com/go.
Patience. It's a virtue. They think you can put me in a box, but you can't stifle a revolution. Cenk Uygur, you started something, an idea. The truth and honesty matter above all else. And the people love you for it. And for a while, so did I. We could have stood united, a political force of reckoning upon our foes, the hypocrites, the phonies, the unjust. But you put me in this box.
Jake! No!
You began without me. You began without me. But God as my witness, I will be the one to finish it.
They did 100 squats a day for 30 days straight. I was like, how hard can that be? That doesn't sound very hard. So I'm gonna try to do this for 30 days and see if there's any difference in my physique.
3 weeks later.
Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
No, I did 100, 100, 100, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
You're pacing yourself.
Yeah.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're going to be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream. All right, back on the Young Turks. First, let me tell you about a sponsor, nordvpn.com/TYT. It's perfect for these days. Unfortunately, we're all at home and using our computers nonstop, and you got to protect them and your online privacy. And Mitch McConnell is literally coming for it, as we talked about earlier in the show. And if you use our code TYT, you're going to get 70% off a 3-year deal and an extra month free. So nordvpn.com/TYT. Okay, and also want to check it on the thermometer real quick, tyt.com/go. It's so important to keep us sustainable in these dark and tough times. You're our light, and you help us press on. So we're at 109,465. Guys, can we see 110 before the end of this show? That would be great. Really appreciate it. Speaking of which, let me go to our members. Progressive Pirate writes in, Squirrelgate. When you're so lazy, you let online trolls form your political policy. It's a great way of framing it. Karen Ola points out a great hypocrisy, yet Mitch McConnell says Obama should shut his mouth. Yeah, which one is it? Should he do that or testify in front of Congress? Okoyo's Week says, Lindsey's already falling behind Jamie Harrison in the polls in South Carolina right now. I wish he would do whatever crazy thing Trump tells him to do and kill his remaining chances. Nothing would make me happier than Lindsey Graham losing to Jamie Harrison. Help Jamie Harrison. Let's make sure Graham loses, that pathetic sycophant. Lastly, YouTube super chat. Allison Macklin says, so grateful for you guys. Wish it could be more. Hope Anna and her mom are okay at Ray John. Thank you, Allison. No, we appreciate every dollar, and it's precious to you guys, and it's precious to us. Brad Derry says, how is Anna's mom? Guys, we don't have an update on that. I love you for caring, and we'll give you guys an update if we have one. Okay? All right, John. Let's
Jake, I just have to add, though, for very different reasons, Mitch McConnell losing or Susan Collins losing would be pretty amazing, too. There's a lot of bad people.
Of course.
That I would love to see lose. Okay, with that, why don't we turn back to the news? Today, the whistleblower, Dr. Richard Bright, testified before the Senate, and he had a lot to say. He started off with a warning about what could end up happening if we don't take our advice from the right people.
Better planning, 2020 could be the darkest winter in modern history. First and foremost, we need to be truthful with the American people. Americans deserve the truth. The truth must be based on science. We have the world's greatest scientists. Let us lead. Let us speak without fear of retribution. We must listen. Each of us can and must do our part now. We must increase the public education about the basics: washing hands, social distancing, appropriate face covering. They're simple but critical steps to buy valuable time until there's vaccine. We need to ramp up production of essential equipment and supplies, including raw materials and critical components. Shortages of these increase the risk of our frontline healthcare workers, and they deserve the best equipment to protect themselves. We need to facilitate equitable distribution of essential equipment and supplies. And finally, we need a national testing strategy. Initially, our nation was not as prepared as we should have been, as we could have been. Some scientists raised early warning signals that were overlooked, and pages from our pandemic playbook were ignored by some in leadership.
So what you saw there seemed incredibly reasonable, but he did say that we weren't as prepared as we could have been, as we should have been, and for that reason, he was already being attacked as he was testifying, and I have imagined it will only get worse as the day continues.
Yes. Main point there is we weren't as prepared as we should have been. And as he explained, we needed 3.5 billion masks, and they would not order them. I did a live video about this on YouTube earlier in the day. Jared Kushner apparently told Trump, don't listen to the doctors. If you order more medical equipment, it will affect the stock market. So that's the kind of callous monsters they are. And by the way, the stock market crashed anyway, you ghoul, you goblin, you idiot. So you got the worst of all worlds.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I won't go on, but like the sheer number of people that have died and that will die today and will die tomorrow and 1,000 will die. How many days into the future? Maybe 10, 30, 100? I don't know. But it's one thing for us to say it could have been stopped, but it could have been stopped so easily. If only these monsters, absolute monsters in human skin, or in the case of someone like him, kind of human skin, hadn't stepped in to stop the government from protecting these lives. And that's why it's so frustrating. Like we've talked throughout this hour about the Democratic response and how invisible they are and how dispassionate they are and how the legislation is a combination of half measures and ridiculous waste to lobbyists and corporations and things like that. And it just, like, I've hated politics for a long time, but I've never hated it as much as I do right now, that I feel like I am surrounded by people that fundamentally don't care about something that should horrify everyone every second of every day until we fix it. And no one in power wants to do anything, either because they're incompetent or evil or just want to protect the stock market, apparently, in the case of the masks. And those who are currently out of power and trying to get back into it, they care more, I guess, but they are 100% bungling this, wasting the opportunity. It is so thoroughly demoralizing every day seeing how this is rolled out.
Okay, real quick. CNN and MSNBC think they're being tough on him. Playing patty cakes. If Obama was president right now and we had these body bags, or Hillary Clinton was president, you'd have a running death count on the screen at all times on Fox News. And it would keep going up as the deaths mounted, right? Is that happening anywhere else? Nope. Democrats, you know what the German model is. I presume some of you know what the German model is and how great a job Germany did in containing coronavirus. It was based on having medical equipment and testing and containing in the ways that John described. A lot of people in power know that. You know how many real Americans know that? None. Zero. They've never heard of the German model. Never, ever heard of it. Why? Because idiot Democrats never made their case. They never told anybody about it. If we had done the German model, we would have saved tens of thousands of lives. We didn't, and no one knows it.
You know, and I would say, honestly, I know that we're critical of both the media and the Democratic Party, but like as largely ineffective as the media has been, I feel like they've been better than the Democratic Party.
Yes.
Like
yes.
there are random reporters asking tougher questions of Trump and revealing how little he cares about anything that's happening on a daily basis, better than all of the appearances I've seen of Nancy Pelosi through the course of the pandemic, honestly. And I know that she's just one, but Chuck Schumer probably is worse, honestly. Joe Biden, for a variety of reasons, which we have described in detail, is mostly invisible, and when he's not, you kind of wish that he was again. Like the media, as bad as they are, as low as the bar as they have set, has been so much better than the Democratic leadership. There are people who have been great, don't get me wrong. They're just not in Democratic leadership. And as long as Democratic leadership is around, they will never get close to it. But for the most part, there are so few people that we can look to that actually seem to grasp the severity of the situation we're in, that we've already been through, and that we still face because of the ongoing war on the war against coronavirus that the administration is currently prosecuting.
All right, let's hear more from the person who unfortunately is no longer part of the administration.
I'll never forget the emails I received from Mike Bowen and indicating that our mask supply, our N95 respirator supply was completely decimated. And he said, we're in deep, the world is, and we need to act. And I pushed that forward to the highest levels I could in HHS and got no response. From that moment, I knew that we were going to have a crisis for our healthcare workers because we were not taking action. We were already behind the ball. That was our last window of opportunity to turn on that production to save the lives of those healthcare workers, and we didn't act.
She's so sad. And obviously hundreds of healthcare workers have died.
Apparently, other people in the administration were annoyed with Dr. Bright for saying, we've got to go right now. We've got to get masks. We've got to get medical equipment. This thing is coming. It's like being mad at a guy in one of the towers on 9/11 for screaming, we got to get out of the building. And they're like, oh, my God, you got to fire that guy. He's causing a ruckus. No, sometimes you got to get out of the building. Yeah. And we didn't have the mess. Here's more from Dr. Bright.
In each of these alerts, and there were dozens of these alerts, I pushed those forward to our leadership in ASPR, to Dr. Kadlec and his senior leadership team. I pushed those warnings to our critical infrastructure protection team. I pushed those warnings to our strategic national stockpile team, who has the responsibility of procuring those medical supplies for our stockpile. In each of those, I was met with indifference.
So let me be clear. There was 300 million masks in the stockpile. The report that Dr. Bright is referring to was not written by the Obama administration. Don't worry, it's not part of OBAMAGATE, okay? It was during the last Republican administration. Bush's administration wrote a report saying if there is a pandemic, we must have 3.5 billion masks. Otherwise, it'll spread like wildfire. So Dr. Bright, in another Republican administration, Trump's, says, guys, we have the report. We know what we're supposed to do. For God's sake, let's buy the masks. Let's buy them. And he probably couldn't understand why they're not buying the masks. But we know now, Trump, hearing Kushner's advice and others, thought, oh no, if we buy masks, the stock market might panic.
Yeah.
So let's at least take the chance that tens of thousands of Americans are going to die. Well, yeah. They took that chance, and that's exactly what happened. Now it's going to be, unfortunately, hundreds of thousands.
You know, we've talked often about the disparity and how Benghazi was talked about and how this was talked about. And the idea with Benghazi was that Clinton didn't take it seriously, like there were warnings, but she ignored them, and so 4 people died. Like, imagine if she had been warned about the oncoming attack for a couple of months, and all she had to do was send them a couple of masks, and she didn't do that, and 4 people died. Imagine how mad they would be. They had months to just spend government money. Trump didn't have to learn to do surgery or anything like that. There was no danger to him. All he had to do was buy some masks and make them available, take it a little bit seriously, warn people, be honest with the American public. It was so easy. It was so obvious, and they refused to do it for a variety of reasons, and every one of those reasons is horrific.
Yeah, and in the midst of all that, he said at one point, I could have been a doctor. The doctors are amazed at what I know. Meanwhile, the actual doctors in the administration are like Buy masks. The simplest thing you could possibly do. He's like, no, I know what I'm doing. We're not going to buy the masks. And he said, maybe I should have been a doctor instead of doing what I did. I'm so good at it. World-class idiot is our leader in the middle of one of the worst crises we've ever had. And yes, the media is definitely culpable because look at how much time they spent on Hillary Clinton's emails. Hillary Clinton's emails is not 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of the problem that coronavirus and Donald Trump's response has been to it. But yet, you know, if you watch American media, you'd think that Hillary Clinton's emails were just as important as hundreds of thousands of Americans dying because of the president's incompetence. Okay. All right, guys, we got to go. We have an amazing post game with you for you. Jared Jackson is going to join me. There are a number of stories. Unfortunately, another African American unarmed, gunned down in our own house. When is it ever going to end? We've got that, and we've got more on the Trump administration. So tyt.com/join to become a member and get the post game. Thank you, John, and we'll see you guys there. All right, back on the Young Turks postgame. Jake Huber, J.R. Jackson with you guys. We got a bunch of stories. And one day we'll bring you guys good news.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Hasn't happened yet.
How are you doing? Just give me 3 seconds on that.
Yeah, good question, JR. Look, man, the funny thing is I still have the same issue that I had pre-coronavirus, which is just being overwhelmed with work. And I just cannot get out from underneath it. And I thought maybe the fact that we're staying home and less travel might help me get out from underneath it. And it did a little bit for a little while, but, you just keep getting buried back in. Having asking the kids 12 times, 28 times a day, did you do your homework yet, is driving me crazy. On the other hand, playing with the kids more and seeing them more is great.
Right.
And I'll tell you, JR, number one best thing about coronavirus for me, the silver lining, is Pro and I have started a football league where we've made up a number of teams and we're playing each other every day and keeping a record. And then there's going to be a playoffs. We were on to season 2. First season, there was only 2 teams. Unsurprisingly, they both made the playoffs. And so Pro won the first Super Bowl, but I'm killing them this season. So let's see how it goes. And we're playing in the front yard, and it's just great.
Not too much to complain about. I'm glad you went first, so I'm not going to go because this is a horrible day. Okay.
So you're just not even going to go? Okay.
Well, it's they come in waves, but there's the stories we're gonna get to. Of course, I don't know if you guys mentioned, but Wisconsin and reopening and fights between the Supreme Court and their governor. Another young black person was murdered unjustly just because of existence and assumptions about her. That one sent me into a downward spiral of the rest of my day. And it was enough that I was listening to a significant portion of Dr. Bright talk about just how doomed we are as a nation. So, there's plenty of things. I smiled when I got this morning. I smiled when I sat at my computer. I smiled when I saw my kid. I see him all the time. It's great. And then you step away from those things and you realize just the things that you have to try to contain in your world to keep it from people who don't deserve to have to deal with it on a large scale. So that's where I am, And
you know what?
Really, really close to the thought of really, does it really matter? That's what I'm close to right now.
JR, you're not alone, man. Everybody is right now almost at the same exact time reaching some sort of interesting breaking point that's in the zeitgeist, that's in the air. Look, guys, here's one ray of hope, maybe, right? Let's whisper of half a dream. Look, like Biden winning the presidency, woo, right? But if on a glorious November night, you guys get to hear me say, down goes Trump. Down goes Trump. Oh, man, we are going to breathe the biggest collective sigh of relief in human history. Literally. Because in this country, it's split, it's 45-40 or so right now with people still undecided. But that's still hundreds of millions of people. In the rest of the world, it'll be billions of people who go, whew. Oh, thank God. The long, dark reign of Donald Trump is over. But cross your fingers. If we say the opposite, then I don't know what we're going to do.
Oh, yeah. I won't go further because I'll be the pessimist after this guy's gone, while he's here, before he came, I'll be the pessimist because the fact that he's here is the country's fault. The country still exists if he's gone. He won't fully be actually physically gone. We have problems that created Donald Trump will continue to exist. That's where I stand. So, sorry, I'll be better tomorrow. I promise.
Now, you know what, JR? Look, I know we got stories to get to, but the part of the point of the post game is to have real conversations. So I'll add one last thing, and it's not a hopeful note, but it's the opposite. But look, what I keep thinking about is these guys. They keep saying, just open up, just open up. Look, I'm not worried about me getting coronavirus. You never know, but if you're healthy and you don't have, immune system problems, and you're relatively young, although we're going to do a story of I'm going to do a story later today of a 43-year-old black woman who died in prison. But you should be okay. The kids should be okay. But what about our parents? Like, I keep thinking about our parents. Do they stay in their home for years and years? Do they go out? Do we risk their lives? And basically, Trump and the Republicans are saying, who cares? Just be done with them. Be done with them. I'm not ready to be done with my parents. So.
And also be done with yourself for the sake of their own happiness and back to their way of life is really what that is. So.
Yeah, and if family values, and all those older voters that are voting for Trump, and amazingly, they'll vote for Trump. Who's saying, who cares? Who cares if the old died? And they'll vote for him because propaganda works. All right, let's do the stories.
Let's do it. I mean, let's go into the reasons why I am where I am. So getting started. We have administration officials, governors, pundits, protesters battling over stay-at-home orders, reopening the economy, who's to blame, whether or not we're going to do it when and how, all amongst this pandemic. And the Wisconsin Supreme Court is making its own news on this fight as they decided against the governors in Wisconsin, of course, the governor's stay-at-home orders that were supposed to be extended until May 26th. So the details of this is the Wisconsin Supreme Court, it ruled against this Democratic governor's stay-at-home order extension just yesterday, saying that the administration exceeded its authority in doing that. So immediately after that, it took under an hour. So they released the orders on the stay-at-home, so they're allowing some businesses to open, these including bars, restaurants, at what seems to be full capacity, very minimal to zero precautions and guidelines as far as which ways to do this. So let's take a look at some of the images that resulted from this decision by this Wisconsin Supreme Court. This is one particular bar, Nick's Bar. This was tweeted out from someone that I guess was there. I don't know if they passed by. They wanted to have a shot and decided to turn around and leave. Who knows? There's Nick's Bar. Another one, GMA was talking about this as well. There's another bar in Wisconsin. Maybe you don't call it packed, but you definitely call it full. Another one is State Street Pub. That's also in Green Bay. Everyone's happy, having a good time. And this is the thing. I want to point out two things. No one is upset that people are smiling and having fun, because guess who wants to smile and have fun? Humans. I just want to first dispel the stupid myth that people want to stay at home or they want to destroy their own country because it somehow doesn't affect them. I've said it so many times. Number two is there's this kid in the background with the hoodie on, the green hoodie behind that lady who apparently is working. I guess maybe it's her kid. She couldn't let him stay at home. Mom, if you get to go, I get to go. Under normal circumstances, I think if there's nothing happening in the world, you probably can't take your kid and slap him behind the bar. I know when I used to go to bars, there was people who were called were they barbacks? They weren't allowed to pour a drink, and they were grown men, grown women sometimes. So the fact that you have a kid behind you at the bar is just, let's release all normalcy and anything that we had any reason for backing up in this country and just say, hey, we're back out there. Let's just be dumb. And before you jump in, Jake, in response to a lot of this, our president decided to tweet out his excitement over this. I don't know if we have the graphic. I saw this late. But the great state of Wisconsin, he tweeted, home to Tom Tiffany's big congressional victory on Tuesday, was just given another win. Its Democratic governor was forced by the courts to let the state open. For some reason, state and open were capitalized. The people want to get on with their lives. The place is bustling. Yeah, he's true. The place is bustling, and we see that we see that right there in those pictures. So Wisconsin's back in, but it's caused a bit of a hodgepodge of what they're calling Wild Wild West and chaos. We'll get to that more, but first, Jake, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so This disease is very hard to figure out. It's a novel coronavirus. So it's taken doctors and scientists time to figure out, for example, if you have antibodies, are you definitely immune or not immune? Will there be a second wave? How big will the second wave be? So to your point, JR, nobody wants to stay home. I miss restaurants. I miss other human beings. I miss being able to hug my mom. And so they always have these like absurd stereotypes of liberals and progressives and Democrats. Oh, you guys want to run our lives. Look, man, I barely care about your life. You could infect us. And yeah, I guess I'm a lib and I care about you to some degree. But do I want to run your life? I'm way too busy to run your life, son. Okay, so I don't care. Oh, you guys want a giant government. Why would I want a giant government? I want a government that takes care of people and that's it. I don't want it intruding into my private life. I don't need it to be gigantic. And in this case, they're like, oh, you guys love being quarantined. What? No, we don't. Nobody likes being quarantined. So what are we worried about? We're worried that when you go into, as Trump said, a bustling bar in Wisconsin, that you're going to have a second wave. You know what happened in 1918? I know both Biden and Trump think it was 1917 or 1916. But in the 1918 flu, the second wave killed everybody. The first wave was small. The second wave was gigantic. And so that's why Fauci keeps saying, watch out for the fall. That's why Dr. Wright today said it could be the darkest winter we've ever had. So the scientists are literally saying winter is coming. And these guys are like, we're in a bustling bar. We're having fun. Oh, yeah. Your freedom. It's called freedom, man. Look, guys, we all love freedom. That's why we're Americans. The question is this the right time to go and have drinks with all your buddies? Look, man, I've seen so many videos, and we can't share it on every story and every day. But I saw a video from Japan about how quickly a virus spreads. They put what is not coronavirus, but a simulation in one guy's hand. They check back in, and it glows in the dark. And they check back in a couple of minutes later. Everyone has it. The green stuff that lights up, everyone in the restaurant has it. And that's what happened in China. One guy had it at one table. In one real case, the entire row, the air conditioner recirculated it, boom, gone. They all have coronavirus, and some of them died. So we're trying to save you. We're trying to protect your lives and our lives. But they think we're out to grab their freedom. That we, like Dr. Fauci is working with George Soros to snatch your freedom in the middle of the night, and you're not going to let him. You're going to get coronavirus and die just to show him. Okay.
So in response, jumping back to Wisconsin, in response from Tony Evers, the governor who was voted, by the way, the state Supreme Court voted 4-3 on this. So they just narrowly agreed with the Republican-controlled legislation who wanted to do this. Let's go to what he had to say about this in response, because he seems to be taken out of it.
We've been making good progress. We're one of the lowest number of cases per capita in the Midwest. We're doing the right things. And unfortunately, in this one fell swoop, 4 judges who didn't really care about what the statutes talk about have thrown our state into chaos.
Throwing the state into chaos. Let's continue on some more things. Let's continue on with more things that he did have to say. We cannot let this ruling undo all the work we've done and all the sacrifices Wisconsinites have made over these past few months. We need everyone to continue doing their part to keep our families, our neighbors, our healthcare providers, as well as our communities safe by continuing to stay safer at home, practice social distancing, and limit travel. Now, by the way, I want to point out there was also already some parameters and some guidelines being put in place as Wisconsin was already slowly reopening under this same governor that they're probably calling a tyrant and probably saying he's trying to limit their rights. He was doing it. So again, it's not about people wanting to reopen. It's about doing it in a way that we can remain open. There's a few states that open up super quick that are potentially have the possibility of having to revert back, which I'm sure none of them will want to do, because that'll have to, first off, the thing Americans can't do is admit they were wrong. So after that happens, what they definitely won't do is revert back, especially after getting praise from this president. So it's to do things the right way, not just to do them. Now, to point out how people aren't doing things the right way, how this has caused such a big problem, following that decision, several counties in Wisconsin also issued their own stay-at-home orders to keep the governor's guidelines in place through May 26th. So they're agreeing with him in his original directive. This includes these counties include Greene, Rock and Dane, which encompasses Madison. Brown County has kept the order active through May 20th, so they cut it by 6 days. And the city of Milwaukee also said the stay-at-home order is still in effect. So it's gone kind of back and forth. And I gave this example before. If you live in one part of your city and there's a small town, and then you find out that the one 15, 20 minutes, maybe it's 45 minutes to an hour away, whatever it is may be, is open and your bar is there, you're going to run over there potentially if you're itching to get out and do so anyway. Now we've caused this, no matter what kind of guidelines are put in place for counties and cities that are looking to contain this and see this through, that's now cutting out their legs, because there's this human interaction thing that happens when you cross all over the place, go and spread this thing, and then come back to even places that were seemingly being trying to be safe.
Yeah, look, we're all dying to get back out there. Everybody's going a little stir crazy. Mm-hmm. The way that we could do that is if you have testing and contract tracing. The way that works is, hey, we all go to work, but we test continually. And if somebody has it, boom, they go get quarantined, you trace their contacts, etc. That way you go back to work. That way you can go to restaurants, you can go to bars, you can go and do all these things. But you've got to meticulously test people so that you can isolate the folks who have the problems. If you isolate well enough, then you can reopen more and more and more. How do I know? Well, many countries have done it, but Germany has done a great job at it. And what they do is, once the ratio of people who are infected gets beyond a certain point, they close the whole city back down, okay? Then they reopen and they do testing and tracing. There is a right way to do this, and they have contained the virus infinitely better than we have. We have per capita way more deaths than Germany because we have almost no testing. I mean, we told the story yesterday, and even if you're super sick in a lot of parts of the country, they still will not let you get a test, let alone doing it regularly at work like the White House does. For the elites, they got more tests than they know what to do with. Everybody gets tested every single day because they're important and the rest of us are invisible.
Sorry, hi you guys. So it's just the way that things work in this country. So I'm kind of done with these folks. I wish they could isolate themselves and have their fun. Really, I wish they could. Just stay in the bar and contain yourselves and make it happen. I don't know if you have anything else on this, but I'm
no.
cool.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's do it. Let's go on.
Let's move on to what has me further depressed. So we've got outraged Americans that are #running with Maud after this brutal murder of Ahmaud Arbery that happened in Georgia that just became public last week. Of course, it happened months ago, but it just became public last week only because the video came out. And as of this week, we're seeing another uninvited hashtag. It's regarding an indiscriminate killing of yet another young black person. In this case, it is 26-year-old Breonna Taylor. She was an EMT. She was found dead in her home back in March, on March 13th. It's in Kentucky. After Louisville Metro Police, they broke into her house, shot her at least 8 times, and apparently it was a misidentification or a drug raid gone wrong. So this story now, we're talking about Ahmaud, this story appears to be making some traction simply because her family has now hired Benjamin Crump, who has taken on the tireless role of representing a lot of these families after their loved one has been murdered, in this case by the police department. So the cops, as I mentioned before, they were carrying out their search warrant for a narcotics investigation, even though no drugs were found in the house. The person they were looking for, this according to the attorney and the family, the person they're looking for was already in custody, nowhere near, had nothing to do with the situation. So whatever mix-up happened back in March, in this case, they haven't done much about it since. So going to the, yeah, that's great. So going to the first graphic, the Atlanta Voice said, Breonna had posed no threat to the officers and did nothing to deserve to die at their hands. That was the complaint that was filed by 2 local attorneys. And Benjamin Crump tweeted out, he said, the Louisville police fatally shot Breonna Taylor. They had the wrong address, and their real suspect was already in custody, as I mentioned. So 2 months later, no one has been held accountable for a death, but we will change that again. And then he has the link for the press release on that. Again, this continues to happen. And so when we say, hey, I think it was LeBron James, who caught some flack from some people for saying after the Ahmaud Arbery killing that we're hunted every day. And they said, stop exaggerating. What are you talking about? We hear about this once every few months. You know why you hear about it once every few months? Because enough people finally coalesce around one of these stories and says, hey, have you guys heard about this? And people go, oh, I guess we should be outraged again. And then lay it to bed until the next time we hear about it 6 months after it happened. It means it happens every day is what it means. And it means afterwards, what Louisville police were doing and then what the police down in Georgia were doing is nothing. That's the response. So first is the first indiscriminate killing or directed killing at certain folks. Then after that, doing nothing about it. It goes back to that weird saying, Black Lives Matter, and then they got mad at people for saying so. Your response to killing Black folks turned into not giving a damn about it. Kind of matches up with the slogan, which I think needs to be more than a slogan at this point, which it is. I'm sorry to try and downplay that. Moving on. So Ben Crump went on to say, they're killing our sisters just like they're killing our brothers. But for whatever reason, we have not given our sisters the same attention. Breonna's name should be known by everybody in America who said those other names because she was in her own home doing absolutely nothing wrong. Last thing, Jank, before that, I want to point out, she was in the house in the middle of the night with her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker. And there was the lawsuit that was posted, said that he jumped up. He's a legal gun owner, which, by the way, shouldn't have to even point that out. But he's a legal gun owner. And when the break-in happened from the police in Louisville, he thought it was a break-in of criminals, which it was. But he thought it was a break-in of criminals that weren't wearing police uniforms. And so he shot back. Guess what's happening to him? He's been also charged. He's facing charges of first-degree assault and attempted murder of a police officer when they shot in that house countless times. More than 20 rounds of ammunition was found in the apartment, and you wake up in the middle of the night, and you're in the room with your girlfriend, and you think someone's breaking in. He called her mom, jumped up and shot back, and now he's facing charges for not allowing them to just murder everybody in the house. That's where we stand on this case.
Yeah. So there's three separate injustices here. First, the actual shooting itself. So just a little bit more context to it. So they had search warrants for two different houses trying to find this one suspect. And they had already gone and done the search at the first house, which was 10 miles away from Breonna's house. And they found the guy. So they got him. They're like, let's do the second one anyway. But they're not looking for drugs. They were looking for the suspect. And they already had the suspect. So it was totally, utterly needless. In fact, by the fact that you have the suspect, you already have some evidence that the other address is incorrect. And what are you looking to find if you already have the suspect? Look, none of this is in question. They admit, yes, we definitely have the suspect, and we did the other raid anyway. Why are you going to do a raid on a wrong address? Their best explanation is maybe they thought it was a second house he had, and maybe there was some drugs in it. There's a million houses with drugs in it. You already got the guy. What are you busting into people's house for? Okay, so you know how many bullets they fired? 20. You know how many times they shot Breonna? 8 times. Okay, so now, according to all the witnesses, they did not announce themselves as police. So Kenneth Walker, legal gun owner, what does he do? Self-defense, and by the way, stand your ground, right? So people bust into your house at 1 a.m. You've not done anything wrong. You wake up, you're startled. They didn't announce that they're police. And all of a sudden you're in the middle of a shootout. So wait. Imagine if the police busted into the house of Bundy people. Remember the ranchers, the Bundy guys?
Yep.
And the Bundy guys shot back. Every right-winger in the country would be like, well, they're those jackbooted thugs, the government officials coming in. These are legal gun owners. Of course they had a right to shoot the cops, etc. By the way, you do have a right. That's the one thing. If someone comes into your house, you're a legal gun owner, you actually do have the right to have self-defense. And even in that case, they're like, nope, who cares? Attempted murder. Attempted murder. And he hit one of the cops. And so I feel bad for that cop. I don't know that he was organizing, whatever, right? But I don't want anybody getting hurt. But was Kenneth Walker guilty of trying to purposely murder cops? He had no idea cops were going to come into their house at 1 a.m. And he didn't even know when they were in the house that they were cops. All he knows is the place is riddled with bullets. So it's so frustrating. But by the way, it is unclear from the stories that I have read, if not knowing there were cops, if Kenneth fired first, because all of a sudden there's all these guys in their house in the middle of the morning, at 1 a.m, or if the cops fired first. But either way, it's self-defense. Yep. Either way it is. And so, okay, the third injustice is the cops then look at this and go, oh, we murdered the wrong person. Who cares? And then for 2 months, do nothing, right? But it's actually worse than doing nothing because they arrested Kenneth Walker and they're trying to put him away for life.
Yep.
It's just, oh, God, how are you not frustrated by this? And how could people that are not African Americans look at this and go, whatever? Like,
because it hasn't affected them yet. That's how we operate here. So, if it, by the way, the explanation for how you can just go into another house after you've already arrested your suspect is similar to what Donald Trump's thinking is. Hey, I mean, it's black folks. Doesn't really matter. They must be up to something. I guarantee you, we're breaking the house. We're going to find something. That's the thought process. So if you're upset about me connecting it somehow to Donald Trump, maybe you get Donald Trump to stop saying things like that, because that is the mindset that allows you to move on and go into the next spot and do that. If you go into an affluent neighborhood where you know there's rich people, white folks living, you know what you won't do? Go kick it indoors and try to shoot up the place, because you will not get away from that without spending the rest of your life in prison. I don't care what cop you are, because they know where the power lies. That's why they do it this way. This is how this always works. And by the way, you're talking about announcing cops coming in. So what if you are a band of criminals? Is it okay? Hey, if I get me and seven of the homies together and we're going to kick in doors and say, it's the cops, does that mean I can start doing it now? Who cares? If I kick in the door and scream, it's the cops, and go shooting, the person lying in bed still gets to go, what? And shoot back. Just saying. Because who knows for sure? Why should I believe this is the cops? I'm not doing anything. I'm asleep. Why is that such, even if they did it that way, that's not a good enough reason for me. I'm sorry. It's just not. Number 3, for drug and narcotics busts in, we're still killing people over this war on drugs, where people are getting high every day at astronomical rates. Let's keep it real. We're still doing this way, and Breonna Taylor has to die over it because we're kicking in doors over a war on drugs after you got the guy in your war on drugs. We're still doing it, and we haven't stopped. We haven't reviewed it. We haven't decided to have a full discussion about this in the country, about how this is killing people. We're worried about killing people with drugs? How about you worried about killing people with 8 shots to their body?
Yeah. So first of all, Breonna, by the way, young EMT, great by every account, doing great job at her, great work at her job. And this is already at that point, coronavirus times, and she was out there trying to save people's lives. It doesn't matter. She was completely innocent. She doesn't have to be heroic for you to care about it, but she happened to be. And they found one of the 3 houses that have no drugs at all in America. So you think if you bust into white folks' homes or rich people's homes, you're not going to find marijuana or cocaine, or lately the very wealthy they're back to LSD, I think, and shrooms and all that stuff, right? But this was like one of the miraculous houses that have no drugs at all. So, but hey, must have been up to something. And then finally, look, there's 2 heroes in this story. One is Sean King, again, bringing attention to this case, and cops and media not doing anything, and never would have done anything if Sean hadn't brought attention to it. He brought tremendous attention to it. Now, all of a sudden, people care, right? because then now you might get in trouble because then the media starts to pay attention. And then Benjamin Crump. So the right wing, I'm sure, has their own stereotypes about Benjamin Crump because he's a lawyer, he's African American, he represents people who are oppressed, etc. Let me tell you something. Every person who has been wronged by the cops is calling Benjamin Crump in the right now. Okay, so he has literally thousands of people trying to get him to represent them. So if he takes a case, that means it's real bad. That means, look, Benjamin Crump isn't right about everything. Nobody is, right? But if he took the case, that means he thinks there is overwhelming evidence because there's far too many African Americans suffering far too many injustices in this country for him to take every case or even 1% of the cases. So if he takes a case, very, very likely there was a massive injustice there, and that could be proved fairly clearly.
And it stretches in so many levels on all these. You want to squeeze in this last one?
Yeah.
Let's squeeze in this last one. Okay, so the pandemic that's spreading across the world, it's killing vast numbers of people, but it's not only just simple transmission between just passing along between the people that's taking innocent lives. So in London, there was a railway worker. Her name was Belly Mujinga. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She recently died weeks after a man infected her with the virus because he became angry. She was working at the rail station, and he decided to spit on her and another worker that was near her. So he spit on her, got mad about something unrelated. Who gives a damn? But shortly after that, both workers became ill. Mujinga succumbed to the illness on April 5th, 3 days after she was put on a ventilator. So one response from her employer did, one sentence was, she told him I'm sorry, that's from her husband. Sorry, one second. So she was upset about it. So they said, we take every allegation extremely seriously, and we are investigating these claims. I'm not sure the degree to which they're going to investigate these things, but her husband also barely had a chance to speak with her. He said he called her when she was in the hospital and thought she was asleep at one point. And then he was told later that she had died. So some of the details behind this, and I brought up we brought up the response from this railway station just to point out that also they already knew she was a vulnerable person. She was classified as high risk because of health issues that were known by them. And despite those pre-existing conditions, she was reassigned to a customer-facing role where she was spat on by this guy, and she was not provided with protective gear to cover and protect herself. She leaves behind us, again, that husband and 11-year-old daughter because this guy decided to try to kill her, which he was successful in.
So this story is a lot about everybody not taking coronavirus seriously enough. So here we had testimony in America today with Dr. Bright, who used to work in the government, saying he told the government, based on a report put together during the Bush administration, we need 3.5 billion masks immediately. They ignored them for months. If you don't have the masks, it's airborne. People get sick, and it raged out of control here in America. We have the most cases, most deaths. Tens of thousands of people died unnecessarily. Mm-hmm. In this story, you can see in a different country, they didn't take it seriously enough. They didn't have people working in tight quarters in public transportation with face masks on. Of course you got to have masks on. Of course you do. Yeah. I mean, this is pandemic 101. But people didn't want to put the mask. They didn't want to buy the mask. They didn't want to provide the mask. And then lastly, I don't know how malicious that guy is. Obviously very, very malicious. But did he think he was going to kill her? I don't know. But maybe, he knew. He said, oh, I've got coronavirus.
Yep.
So maybe he thought, she'll get sick, but maybe she won't die.
There's laws against people who have STDs that are lethal and knowingly spreading them. There's laws based on that. I don't see how this is any different.
Yeah. So, look, Jared, give us the poll, because I'm torn on this in terms of what should happen to the guy.
Yeah. So there's a poll we're running 2IT over at 2IT about your reactions to this, and the 4 potential once they find the guy. I feel like I don't think they've even found him yet. But the spitter who spat on this woman and killed her, the 4 choices are: should he get no penalty? Should he pay a fine? Some jail time, or the rest of his life in prison. You guys can vote for that. Of course, tyt.com/polls/London to let us know what you think.
Yeah, going forward, you got to do /polls in every poll. But if you go to /polls, you'll see all of our polls too. So that's the upside of it. So in this case, it's /polls/London. But I'm genuinely curious what you guys think. JR, what do you think? I think jail time. I mean, he did kill her, so you could argue for a life sentence. It's probably too much, but and they have not caught him yet. But when they do catch him, a fine seems pathetically little.
Come on, it's just, we got laws against killing people and knowingly infecting people. So along those same lines, I think those get jail time, and this should be the same. If he doesn't succumb to his sickness or the virus before then anyway, because as you mentioned, he has it as well.
Yeah, it's possible that they find him, but he's already died. So we don't know.
You know where my negative mind has been today, so I think you can guess which part of this poll I'm landing on.
Yeah. I get a sense of it, JR. So take it seriously. And by the way, when you're interacting with people, in this case, it was malicious, and you could charge less than, murder in the first degree. And obviously UK has different laws than the US does, but you could do manslaughter. You could do negligent homicide. Right. You could do a lot of those different things, whatever the equivalent of that is in the UK. But this is an extreme case, obviously, but guys, in your regular lives, for God's sake, be careful. You might think, oh, what's the big deal? Mask, gloves. No, you got to have it on. If you don't have it on, you could accidentally spread it. And when you could get it. But just as importantly, you could spread it. And if you do, you might be healthy, and so you might not worry too much about it. You might be middle-aged and not worry too much about it. But you don't know who you're interacting with. What if that person has immune system problems? Even if they're not older, and you're going to interact with older people too. But when it's older folks or people with immune deficiency or diabetes or these other issues, you are literally playing with their lives.
And you're playing with
intend to.
And you're playing with their families' lives. Again, she's 11-year-old daughter is left here without her mother. For anyone who's lost their parent and at a younger age like that, imagine how this woman could still be there for her kid as long as you don't go to spitting on people. This is what you're doing when you think you're just getting angry about something. Let me get back at them from something that has nothing to do with them. So consider something else besides yourself when you decide to get mad at someone that, first of all, wasn't doing anything to you. And if she was, I still don't care.
Yeah, nothing deserves a death sentence like this. I mean, for God's sake, get under control. All right, looking forward to your opinions, guys. Okay, guys, we got to go. JR, thank you, Ben. Appreciate it. Hang in there. We're all fraying. But let's hang in there together, okay?
It happened then every once. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be fine.
Yeah. No. Look, part of the reason you're doing the post game is because John needs a break. We all need a break.
Yeah.
Right. So tomorrow we're actually going to do it with Michael Shore. So that'll be fun. Return of Epic on the main show, and he'll be presenting the stories. All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow. JR, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you.